the committees are on break for a little bit. It'll look pretty similar, but not identical, and we'll talk about that more at the end. All right, I guess we should get started. So with that, Diego, if you could call the first item.
Item 1, add identification of law enforcement officers code to prohibit facial covering, require badge visibility, and require identity verification for individuals conducting law enforcement activities. Parentheses, add code chapter 23.30.
All right, I'm going to pass the gavel over.
Point of order.
Counselor?
I wanted to take, yes, this is Counselor Smith, and I wanted to table my resolution.
Counselor Smith has moved to table. Do I have a second?
Sure, second.
Second.
And does table, I apologize, I can't remember. Does tabling require a vote? It doesn't. Okay. The motion, Counselor Smith's resolution is hereby tabled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to, do you mind if
Yeah.
So just to get the presentation started, I'm going to ask my senior policy advisor to come up here. That's Jack Jaden, and then also to get the screen share going for our slides. Bear with us a minute.
You can say over BCP's chat. It's okay. I just wanted to see this thing here.
We got it shared on our side, but not yet in the room. So just bear with us a second.
Hey guys, how we doing? Nice to see you. Did it send out the notifications today, or did it have trouble doing the notifications? I don't know. As I could sort of.
There we go. Colleagues, I'm excited to bring forward for your consideration and referral to the full City Council an ordinance to ensure that all law enforcement in the City of Portland are unmasked, identified, and verified. Portlanders, you have the right to know who's policing you, and today's ordinance, if the full council adopts it, will enshrine that right into law. Next slide, please. So we're going to do a quick presentation at the top. This will include the updates since January 13th, where we've already discussed much of the content of this ordinance. We're going to hear about the precedents set by Denver and St. Paul through some invited testimony. We're going to talk about the legal implications of it, as well as hearing from some of the experts on this. After we do wrap up the presentation, we'll have time for technical questions and answers. We have a technical amendment that we'll be putting forward. Also, councilors can float any other amendments that they wish to propose after public testimony, and then we'll take the public testimony and then.
There's likely some TFers in the thing getting ready to do a thing there. I don't think Tommy or anybody else kind of saw them there or anything like that, or thought it was a big enough deal for them to show up at this meeting or something like that. But I think there's going to be some TFers wanting to speak later on.
Didn't have the chance to say, please put it in written testimony as well. And my main focus on this is to make sure that people understand the legislation, how straightforward it is, and don't get lost in any of the misinformation out there. Next slide, please. The big question that this ordinance aims to answer is, who are these people? We've seen around the country, but we've seen here in Portland, people who are masked, smashing windows, pulling fathers out of their cars as they are dropping their children off at school, using unmarked vehicles with no license plates, and broadly spreading terror and fear. We also have heard a great number of stories of impersonation from around the country, and we'll talk about that more later on. We know that ICE is not telling where and when they are operating in the city. There's a concept called deconfliction that we'll talk about later, which is a crucial practice to inform one another when agencies are operating in the same area. This helps avoid accidental interference and safety concerns between law enforcement agencies as well as for the public. And so this is a practice that we're also talking about assisting through this process because
city
we
government
want and
that
need
doesn't
to
like
know
them.
where people are in our community.
That's not a good idea.
Please. Already talked about that. Skipped ahead. One more, please. The key purposes: accountable, transparent law enforcement at all levels, prevention of kidnapping, fighting fear and intimidation, and accountability and transparency. Next slide, please. The key parts of the policy remain the same. While a masking ban was passed at the state level in House Bill 4138, as you'll hear later on today, one of the core components is requiring that the city and all local jurisdictions adopt masking and identification policies within 180 days of it being signed. Right now, Portland Police does not have a masking policy. I want to acknowledge that there is a practice that's been in effect for a number of years now of not masking at the Portland Police. And I want to be clear that we have not found in our constituent communications or research a recent example of Portland Police masking in the past few years. However, there's no policy yet. The next part is identification, which includes clearly visible badge numbers, agency insignia, and names. Portland Police has always had higher standards in the state on identification, and we're going above that practice by raising it for all the other agencies as well. We talk about verification, which is the idea that if a person is doing something that requires law enforcement authority and it's not visible that they have it in an obvious way, that we need to make sure that they have it, and that Portland Police will look into those situations as they come up, whether they're seeing it directly or whether someone in the community is calling for help. And finally, documentation is woven throughout the policy. Next slide, please. This includes written reports, body-worn camera when possible, documentation of the incident, and of course, creating a public record that can be asked for by a member of the public, so someone's lawyer or family member, but also used when, and I do believe this will happen someday soon, that we have a federal government that is interested in accountability, that we have the records and we've been maintaining them now. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the end of the sort of introductory piece here. I just wanted to make sure that our intent here is known. And I believe this sets us up for our first invited testimony. I want to note that the city of Denver has voted to pass a mask ban. They're one of two cities that have done so recently, the other being St. Paul. I'm a little jealous that they beat us to the punch. I want to be acknowledging of that because we got started a while ago. But I did want to acknowledge that we do have online with us council member from Denver, Chantel Lewis. I don't know if we also have Councilor Alvarez, but I want to pass it over.
How effective that
yes,
is.
we do. We have both. Excellent. And right before I pass this over, I do want to note that we do have Spanish interpretation available here for today. And I wanted to just acknowledge that. And if it comes up, I think just come on over and talk to the folks over here on your right. But I'll pass it over to our colleagues from Denver. Thanks so much for being here.
Great, thank you. I'll start and give Councilwoman Lewis a moment to get with us. But my name is Flor Alvidrez. I serve on Denver City Council, and I am honored to be here to urge you to pass this policy. In Denver, we realized that we had taken something for granted. That was that local law enforcement do not operate with a mask. And unidentified, but we began to see more instances around the country and here locally where this is happening. And what residents, the question that was posed to me is, what are we supposed to do when someone shows up with a gun and a mask? This is not something that we're used to. We don't know if we have the right to ask these questions. We all know that our Constitution has been put into question, and the Fourth Amendment guarantees people the right to be secure against unreasonable search and seizures, and to be able to, if someone is enforcing law, they are required to identify themselves. And when someone's masked, they're not identifying themselves. This is what our residents have told us is the bare minimum that we can do at this very uncertain time. This is not extreme. It's just, again, literally the bare minimum. In a democracy, an authority should never operate anonymously, and people shouldn't be allowed to hide their faces, as we are not allowed to hide our faces. We respectfully urge you to pass this legislation and help protect.
Same people that made everybody hide their faces 4 years ago.
You bringing this forward.
Thank you. I believe Councilwoman Lewis, if you are able to get started.
Saying you shouldn't hide your faces. 4 years ago, they literally made everybody hide their faces.
City Council with my colleague here, Flor
Hypocrites.
Alvidrez.
Hypocrites.
And as she spoke about, she and I co-sponsored a piece of legislation that we were actually pretty excited about that has made a huge difference in the communities that we serve. In terms of the representation that I have in the neighborhoods that I represent, I have a large population of immigrant and refugee communities.
Just FYI, the Denver one, I don't know about the other place, but compliance conflict. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has stated it will not comply with the local ordinance, creating a potential legal conflict between city and federal officials.
She had no idea who these folks were, if they were ICE, if they were law enforcement, if they're impersonators. And every single day we saw that the attendance within that particular school and many of the schools within our communities started to see a decline in the number of students that were coming because families were too afraid to come to their schools. And one of the things that I love about the work that Councilwoman Alvidrez and I were able to address is that we started working on this back in June, and we were able to think about how can we make sure that this is operational for the law enforcement folks who would be responsible for putting this into operations, understanding that we're a legislative body. And so we really wanted to make sure we hit in on that. As a counselor, one thing that I really appreciate is the opportunity to turn pain into policy. And so often we have policies that are painful to individuals in our community. And I think this is an opportunity to turn pain into policy. And so I appreciate the work that you all are.
Pain into policy? Seriously?
And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Lewis. I know that our Denver colleagues have some time constraints on them. So while we're going to get through the whole presentation, I just wanted to allow for any question briefly that anyone may have for them before we move on to the rest.
Councilor Zimmerman. Councilor Zimmerman.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't have a question. I am just going to give great gratitude to my colleague and friend, Chantel Lewis from Denver. We know each other from some other organizations and appreciate your work as always, Councilwoman. So thank you for showing up. We're missing you at NLC, which is where you should be. But thanks for stepping up. And to the colleagues, that is where I'm at. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I'm back in our capital with NLC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for being here. Our next folks coming up to the front, I believe they're here in person. We have Representative Choatson, as well as Anne Marie Backstrom from Representative Chaichi's office. I'm not sure where exactly, but there.
I'm sure the people
I can
will vote
just
on
let
this
you know that
unanimously.
Rep. Johnson is on his way.
Ooh.
He should be here in any minute.
Okay.
Yeah, the
well,
blue
we're happy
hairs
to
and the
let
signs. You got a lot
if
of
you'd
old
like to get
people out
started.
there.
We'll make it work.
Wonderful. Thank you. For the record, my name is Anne Marie Beckstrom, and I'm the Chief of Staff to Oregon State Representative Farah Chaichi. She represents House District 35 in Beaverton and Aloha. So Rep. Chaichi was the champion and chief sponsor of
Major
House Bill
Hispanic area.
4138, which is the Law Enforcement Accountability and Visibility Act, also known as LEVA. This passed during this most recent 2026 legislative session, and it's currently sitting on the governor's desk awaiting signature.
Piercings everywhere.
I'm here today just to testify regarding the standards LEVA sets and what the bill accomplishes on a statewide level. So House Bill 4138 established a uniform minimum standard for all law enforcement operating in Oregon. That's local, state, and federal. The goal is that authority will be visible, accountable, and transparent. It's based on a really simple and widely shared belief that when someone has the power to stop you or detain you or arrest you, you deserve to know who they are and who they work for. Importantly, I want to state that LEVA sets a floor and a statewide standard, but it explicitly says that local jurisdictions and governments can set more stringent policies if they would like to. So quickly, here's what the bill does. When officers are on duty and actively engaged in law enforcement activities, they must clearly display their name or identifying number, their agency, and their badge. It also limits the use of facial coverings that would conceal the identity, with narrow and practical exceptions for undercover operations, tactical response teams, and legitimate health and safety needs. It requires that law enforcement agents
Health and safety, yeah. Health of the nation, safety of the nation, getting out. People who don't belong here. Yeah, they'll have health and safety needs. Check.
issued by an agency for not meeting the requirements. It also includes safeguards for democracy. So during periods when ballots are being collected or state or federal elections, officers may not wear any facial coverings while performing their duties within 250 feet of ballot drop sites, ballot marking areas, or voting booths. Lastly, the bill provides that.
Oh, you mean where illegals aren't supposed to vote in those places? Why would they be there?
investigations. So that includes those that would target people for protected speech or discriminatory reasons. It's really to create a clear line between Oregon and federal overreach. And in all of this, people may seek injunctive relief on agencies only, not on individual employees to address violations. So our office does not currently have a position on the ordinance before you today at the city level, but we do want to acknowledge that local law enforcement is widely following these practices already in the city of Portland. And we're really excited to work with local jurisdictions such as the city of Portland as you implement these policies over the next 180 days and as you craft your own policies using LEVA as a base standard. I'm happy to answer questions if you have them. Thank you.
Yeah, true. They only need their own health and safety. So if they don't mask themselves, leftists will go after them and their families. So yeah, check.
Councilor Zimmerman.
Hi, Anne Marie. Thank you. I want to say that the last part of your testimony said that law enforcement in Portland is largely already complying with this. I understand that Representative Choatson may have said that we were the gold standard when you were writing this bill. Can you talk a little bit about the lessons that you got from the Portland Police Bureau's approach to this topic? Because I really just appreciated the points that you've made in terms of we have a right to know.
Or the police
And
union
you
has
all have
a chance
identified
to
that there was a gold
have
standard. So what was Portland doing right that you guys used? It was
usually are like,
Thank you.
Yeah, so we actually worked
constitutional.
really closely with local and statewide law enforcement here in Oregon when crafting the bill. It was a really good process, I can say, as a staffer. So we worked with them to really write the language of this bill. So especially when it comes to what are the narrow exceptions when an officer may need to wear a mask for health or safety, or when they're doing undercover operations and duties as well. So that really came from local law enforcement. A big lesson we learned, and I believe that Representative Choatson may speak to this, is due to the supremacy clause, we have to include all law enforcement when we are creating these pieces of legislation. So in California, they ran into some issues in the courts because they didn't include state law enforcement. And so our legislation specifically says it's our local law enforcement, it's our state law enforcement, and it's the feds. And I think, again, it really goes back to this belief of you deserve to know who's knocking at your door, who's assisting you, who may be potentially detaining or arresting you.
Thank you.
What a
going
woman.
a little bit further on the supremacy piece that you just ended on, Anne Marie, and good to see you again. So I have all faith that local and state will comply with state law. Does your bill outline what happens when the federal government proverbially tells us to shove off? Because I have a feeling that will be some of their approach based on what we've seen so far. What provisions exist there? You talked a little
You
bit
have no
about,
provisions.
about
As she said,
citizens' rights with
supremacy
agencies. And
clause.
can you go a little bit further in that?
Yeah, so the bill only includes a private right of action. So folks can submit a lawsuit basically for injunctive relief only. And we do foresee this being litigated in the courts with whatever the feds decide to do or not do.
I just wanted to note that Representative Choatson just got here. So for those who might be able to not see online.
Thanks, Chair. That's all the questions I have right now. Appreciate it.
Well, people there, not a whole lot of
I'd
young
love to
people. Usually
pass it over to
the
Rep.
Tiefers would show up
Thanks for
there,
being here.
with their 20.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. This is my first time testifying in front of
Oh,
City
you just
Council,
recognize the
so
people
very
in the
excited
back.
to be here. For the record, my name is Willie Choatson. I'm proud to be the state representative from House District 46, which has a large chunk of Southeast Portland. In my legislative capacity, I am vice chair of the House Judiciary Committee. I sit on the Budget Committee for Ways and Means. In this last legislative session that just wrapped up a couple weeks ago, I was really focused on our immigrant justice package as well as coordinating our federal response package. And so I didn't have the pleasure of hearing the testimony before me. I'm sure Anne Marie covered a lot of the things that I would have liked to talk about. So I'll be very brief, and I'm mostly here because if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. What I will just say briefly is, as I'm sure many of you have experienced, one of the top issues at every town hall I think I've had in the past year and a half has been the
grounds zero
role
out there, yeah.
of masked agents in our communities, the fear that is
really?
leaving community members with, the uncertainty when they're talking to somebody about who that person works for.
Here's ground zero. He's outside there right now, just to show you. Ground zero PDX. Go and follow him on YouTube here, but that's outside the building right now. They must all be inside right now. Unless there's a few underneath
Doesn't
there.
look like they are going crazy in there at all.
No,
So
they're not. Not yet.
I think much of our local law enforcement was a really kind of substantive and cohesive process. We were, working with ACLU and Latino Network and so many other great groups, but also cities and counties and police unions, police chiefs, sheriffs, trying to make sure we understood what is the current common practice of our.
Nothing wrong with old people, but yeah, the average age in that room, at least in the audience, is 60, 65, I think.
Could we raise the bar and also really standardize
the average hair color is blue.
with the interaction of public bodies and the federal government investigations. It has protections about voting rights and making sure that we don't have masked agents near our voting locations during election time. But I think most relevant to your conversation today was really around uniform requirements and masking requirements. Let me pause there, but just really say that there was a lot of thought into the ways in which LEVA does and does not preempt local law enforcement.
How could you tell? How can you tell? I don't know how you. I told that I have a cold. I thought my voice was changing. yeah, it's funny. I'm trying to be funny. It's not working.
I think that's a nuance and technical.
Councilor Zimmerman.
Thanks.
Hey,
Representative, good to
Robert,
see
how you doing? Nice to see you.
I noted that you had called Portland the gold standard earlier, so I won't bring that up again. But
notifications
can
are going
you
out.
talk a little bit about, if so? Let me rephrase this. Does your bill, does it direct that law enforcement intervene or contact or I guess put themselves on scene anytime that there's an ICE action? Is that what the state bill is doing? And can you talk a little bit? I know that's been thought of in different spaces at different times. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Councilor Zimmerman. Thank you for the question. Good to see you. No, it does not. In fact, I think it absolutely mandates nothing related to what local law enforcement is doing when there is ICE activity. And so that was an important question of what we did and didn't do. There were, thoughts and questions along the way about where that was going to land. Specifically, the only enforcement mechanism within LEVA is, and it's both broad and narrow depending on how you're looking at it. It's a civil court action. Anyone can bring it. It's broad in that sense that a member of the public can see something that's violating LEVA and bring that to court. But it's narrow in the sense that the only result, the only accountability mechanism is injunctive relief. As a judge can say, you need to follow this law and you need to stop doing any action that's not following this law. It does not have a role for local police, and it doesn't preempt that. It doesn't prevent from any jurisdiction from requiring that. But LEVA itself does not require any sort of action, any sort of documentation, anything of that nature of local law enforcement relating to ICE. It requires local law enforcement to have clear policies around masking and uniforms that are in compliance with LEVA, but not to the question that you're asking. It does not require that.
Hey, Phobic, how you doing? Nice to see you.
I understand that
Snort.
that maybe had been floated at one point, but it sounds like that was not decided upon. Any thoughts on that? Just a matter of getting votes in the legislature? Was it an operational concern? Is it just the fact that there are just so many different police agencies in the state of Oregon that trying to do a one size fit?
He's asking good questions here.
Because I know it's just been a huge part of the community concern, which is how do we deal with this?
Absolutely, Councilor Zimmerman. Appreciate the question. I think everything you just said is right, and in the sense that I think it's all the above. There was a number of different ideas floated in terms of more involvement, in terms of we've seen California go with criminal penalties, so that implicitly or kind of explicitly requires.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on it. There's not doing anything going on outside right now. Looking at ground zero speeds, nothing going on outside unless they're a different entrance, but not through the main entrance of City Hall anyway. There's quite a few inside. In the back, you'll see some youngsters in that back row back there. They might give some things, and then the older people with the signs are out in front there, up in front.
A need for, I think, uniform clear requirements across the entire state. So most people don't know when they've crossed over a city line or a county border necessarily, and we want to make sure that someone living in Oregon.
Well, oh, that means I have to restream him if you did that, Snooks. Doggone it. I don't mind restreaming him, but I was focused mainly on the meeting here. So, okay, we'll put the Ground Zero feed in the corner there. Hold your horses. Hold your horses. It's okay. It's okay. I gotta go find it again. Hold your horses.
I think it's been the topic of our era. Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question, Representative, thank you for coming by to talk with us. So I'm curious, since the state basically trumps local law, will this particular piece, will it be negated because of what you all passed in the legislative session, which is very similar to this? I'm trying to figure out what the difference is between
Is that big enough, guys?
what we're trying to put forward and what you all have done in terms of trying to make sure people can recognize who law enforcement is.
Thank you for the question, Councilor Smith. It's a good question. It's one of the core reasons I wanted to be here, is to make sure I could lend clarity there. The shortest answer is no. The slightly more nuanced answer is I do believe LEVA preempts one very specific area, which is in drafting LEVA, right, we say you must not wear masks, except here are the circumstances where you can. Maybe you're doing an arson investigation. Maybe it's a SWAT team response. Maybe it is, temperatures that are negative 10 degrees. And so we laid out a number of exceptions.
Top left there, nobody outside.
In the preemption language, we're really clear that we do not preempt local governments. That was a real moment of negotiation, and we were really clear on that. I think everyone passed it clear-eyed that we were not preempting local governments. But local governments can go further in what they require. They can go further, I think, in what kind of accountability metrics they have or what kind of duty to investigate there is, but they cannot change what those exemptions to masking are. Similar with uniforms. So with uniforms, you must wear a uniform except if you are an undercover officer, et cetera. So I don't believe that a city if LEVA goes into law, and it's awaiting a governor's signature, but I expect it will get it. When it goes into law, I do not believe it preempts what the city is trying to do here, other than those exceptions that LEVA must be included at the city level. This is maybe speaking even one step further. I think that the exceptions which are also baked into this, the language is slightly different, and there's some room to argue whether those are kind of one-to-one or not. My instinct as a court would probably rule that anything that is less of an exception than LEVA provides would be kind of read to comply with LEVA. So I don't think it would be preempted, but I do think a court might read the exceptions in the city law to comply with the exceptions that are already within our state law.
And just like you have taken a clear line to what is federal and what is local law enforcement, I'm just concerned that we're going to be asking the Portland police to do a little bit more than what you're talking about, because I don't think yours has anything to do with that. And I'm concerned that we're being a little bit too granular in how we're looking at this. And I appreciate what you all have done, but I'm just trying to make sure that we're within our rights and what we're able to do, and not trying to be preempted by the state.
Thank you so much, Counselor. And just so briefly, but I think, there's a legal question and there's a policy question. On the legal side, I think we were really clear when we crafted LEVA that but for those exceptions that I just mentioned, we're not preempting locals from deciding what's best for their own communities. The policy question, I completely leave up to you all. I think that, that's not my role to weigh in on. But on the legal side, we were really clear that we were not preempting.
Oh, okay. I thought you were here because you were in support of the current policy.
I felt it was really important for me to make sure that the story of LEVA was told, the choices and the distinctions that we made, the lines that we drew around what was preempted and what weren't preempted. But no, Counselor, I've, my personal capacity, I might have beliefs, but I feel like I'm here as a state representative that worked on a state law and wanted to make sure that I'm not telling you all what to do for the city, but I want to make sure that I am really, really clear. Yes, about. No
problem with that at all.
Yeah. Totally.
I just thought that you were coming to testify to be in support of Councilor Canal's
that side or the side better
mask, and I think you know, we all have lots and lots of work to do. And I just want to make sure that if there's something that's already, I think LEVA really kind of took care of everything, and it took care of what's required by the state. And I don't want to be jumping all over your bill, but I just think that you all took care of it. I don't think we really need this bill right now.
Well, I guess I could try to.
I ask people to react not non-orally with the jazz hands or thumbs down or what have you. Councilor Smith, can we move on?
Oh, sure. Go
Okay.
ahead, I'm finished.
Yes, I do.
Okay, Councilor Canal.
Yeah, thanks. And just to be clear, we have expert panels coming up here and you know, testifying with their experience and their expertise. I also want to note that there is a technical amendment package, and we've been presenting on that because this was filed before the state legislative session finished. And so we have updated the language in this technical amendment package to align, I believe verbatim, with the state legislation, which is House Bill 4138, I believe. And so once that is adopted at the start of our conversation, we'll be operating off of the literal exact same words. So just wanted to clarify that. And then let me know when I can go on to our next, as we do have a few more.
Actually, I do have a question, which is kind of a subjective question for both of you, which is you both said that the state law provides a floor, not a ceiling. But I'm just kind of curious, did you feel like what you wound up with was something that, you know, will make a difference and you were proud of, or was it like kind of weak tea and you grudgingly supported it because it was the best you could get in terms of the requirements for identification and masking?
I can, I'm Anne Marie again for the record. I can speak to that a little bit. So when Rep. Chi first introduced this bill, it did have a lot more components in it, and we worked really hard, tirelessly. I mean, there were 11 p.m. phone calls, like trying to figure things out and make amendments.
As you probably can tell, Ground Zero
Amendment
PDX is
11 in a
the
short
video is
session,
the
which
top
was
right
wild.
corner. I think
And every step of the way, we looked at community. We looked at our
we can see what
partners at the
he's saying out there
ACLU.
real
We
quick.
looked at immigrant communities that are doing this work every day. And
Nothing
we finally
right
decided
now,
that, you know
unless
what,
I'm
we
missing
needed to get
here.
something across the finish line. But I
full
think,
volume.
you know, I can speak for Representative
But
Chaichi when I
muted for
say
some
the
reason.
intention is to come back
anyway,
and make
then
it
this lady
stronger. And we're
works for
really
somebody in the
excited to
state
see
or
this
something like
become
that.
state law and see
And then
what our local
can
jurisdictions do.
somebody? I'll find Ground Zero's link
And
here in
thank
a
you for the
second. Hold
question,
on.
Councilor Novak. I'm extremely proud of the work that we accomplished, Leva. I don't
Go
think it's
pop in.
weak
Don't
at
forget the
all.
like
I don't think it's
button and the
performative. I
subscribe
think that,
button,
you know,
and
the California
don't click
case
my
came
buttons.
down,
Like, I got a cold, so
you know, on the
touch my
California's
buttons.
mass ban in a
I'll
moment where
just
we were already
touch
pretty
the other
far along
buttons
in
on the
Leva,
screen,
and
but
it was
don't
really great
touch my buttons when I
confirmation
get
that the path that we
a
were
cold,
on
whatever I have.
was likely to hold up in court, that it was carefully
Here's
thought
the other
through, that
button
it
I wanna
involved a lot
press
of
right there.
stakeholders. So I think that it is incredible work. It's one of the pieces of legislation I feel most proud to have worked on in my brief time in the legislature. And I don't want that to be misinterpreted for a position on this that I don't intend for it to be. I think that the role that ICE is playing in our communities and the way in which they are terrorizing our communities is a civil rights issue of our moment. And so it is incumbent on every single layer of government to use their power in the smartest, most nuanced, you know, most actionable way possible. It's for you all to figure out whether this is the policy that you want to pursue in that area, but it was a state policy I was very proud of. And also we knew that there was going to be room for local jurisdictions to come in and figure out if they felt like there was more to do. And I feel like that's exactly what you all are doing.
Thank you. Councilor Hall, who do you have next?
Sergeant Paul Steigletter from the Law Enforcement Action Partnership is next up. While you're swapping out, just let me say congratulations to you on the end of a strong session,
That's what
and
the lady was
thank you
saying.
both for being here and your whole teams as well.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
You guys want to see what that lady was saying real quick?
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon.
Wait a second.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Paul Steigletter, and I'm a retired.
Let me put up that other screen real quick. Sorry about that. Let's see. Multitask here.
Well, yeah, you're saying like if it's all right for me to be around women. Well, why don't you ask my mom that question, you dumbass?
Well, what's her address? Maybe she wants to get me.
Of course you want my address because you guys dox people.
Who's you guys?
You and your friends, your Antifa friends.
You guys.
You and your Antifa friends.
I'm not Antifa, bitch. I'm a fucking.
You're close enough.
I'm a Dutch store
You're
veteran.
close enough. And yeah, well, you should. You don't deserve it. You don't deserve anything.
That's your opinion.
You're right, and I'm entitled to my opinion. You're the one that's all emotional.
Macing women for their First Amendment right. You're a fucking weirdo.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Why don't you make some men?
I don't know who you're talking about. You obviously got me mixed up with somebody
I got
else.
you fucking mixed up with someone else, you fucking little bitch. Fucking pull your face out. Scaredy little bitch.
You're the one pulling it out. You're the one scared.
Very friendly woman.
Why
there,
do you
very
come over?
friendly
Why do
woman.
you come over to me if you're not scared? Why do you come
Come
over
on,
to
how you
me?
doing? Nice to see you. Thanks for hitting the like on that video I uploaded.
Yeah, I get maced all the time too, so
You're
it's
not a
nothing
patriot
new.
if you're macing people for the First Amendment right.
I'm not macing people for their first.
Here, let me play this guy again here real quick. I hate it when it does that.
That's about the only difference. And so we, as this law comes out and rolls out, I think you're going to be really happy with the way that Portland is in compliance. Portland's been in compliance with the spirit of this law since 2020. They are the gold standard of identification of who's out there policing you. And we really need to be careful that we don't add confusing language when we're introducing ordinances that are mirroring House Bill 4138. We got to call apples apples and we got to call oranges oranges. Otherwise, we get confused.
Police have the
And
gold
that,
standard and recognizing
leads us
who's
to where
policing you. How many
operationally,
times have they allowed Antifa
officers aren't
to
going
run
to
the
be
streets,
able to perform
to
to
close
their
down
best if we
streets,
try
to
and
dictate what's
confuse the
going on
language.
without a permit?
Point two, with
and not
respect to
any
masking prohibitions,
identification
the
and
ordinance should limit
recognize
any
that they're doing is
additional
against the law and allow them to continue to
administrative
do it.
requirements to only
Is that the
PPB.
gold standard
So
of
if aggression
policing?
police officers
when
steps
you
into the city of
allow,
Portland when they're doing
people
law
to take
enforcement
over
or assisting
streets,
Portland, they shouldn't be held accountable to the
rallies and permits and making
administrative
bike rides and
requirements.
all this other stuff without
Section
permits?
23,
That's evidently
30,
the
30
gold standard of
D3
policing.
relating to documentation.
Don't blame
Again,
the
it should
police themselves. I blame the
refer
government
to
that- well, city
Portland
government
Police
that
Bureau
makes them do
only,
that.
which you have operational
nonsense.
control over.
Okay, back to this.
Point three is section 233050, and this is your sticky wicket. You know, this is the reason that we're here. This is an issue that's transfixing the nation. We have law enforcement, local law enforcement encountering people in camouflage, wearing masks, driving unmarked vehicles. Are they impersonators? Are they federal agents? We need to know who's policing us. But if you're going to codify this operational requirement, we need to be exact and we need to be right. Do the right things for the right reasons, the right way. We need to slow down and look at.
Would they do
So
this if
Denver
it was
came and
Biden in
talked.
office?
Awesome, and they talked about the masking. This ordinance goes further than that, and the way it goes further is it talks about not just masking, but documentation and identification
what she's carrying
of
over
who
there.
is out there doing those kind of things and what's going on. And so
Somebody's in a mask over there, evidently. They want everybody else to
that's what it does.
unmask,
It
but
goes further than masking,
afraid to show their
and it's
themselves.
going in a direction to actually have the
should be up to-
police
yeah, it's live
be
on
present at these things
zero.
and be useful to the community. Remember that you're going to be the first in the nation, and we need to do it right. We need to set the standard. We need to use the gold standard of the Portland Police to make this ordinance the gold standard of how other policing agencies should work in the future. Remember that these encounters are not one size fits all. And so you really need to focus on policy and not procedure. You need to be ever mindful that PPB is under a consent decree. They're under a consent decree with the U.S. Department of Justice. And we want to further recommend that it clearly states, absent a probable cause of a violation of Oregon revised statutes, Portland Police will not detain or interfere with federal law enforcement or apparent law enforcement activity. So you're going to, the police are only going to show up because of a call for service.
Please,
or
can
they're
people be
stumbling
quiet?
upon-
Here we go.
Hey, if people can't be quiet and
That's
have
their
to
warning.
ask people to be removed, please let the testifier speak.
You said before they
Your
get one
police are going to
warning.
be called to a situation like this, or they're going to stumble upon it. And so when they stumble upon it, they need to have this ordinance as they go forward.
when they first
and
started, they
act
said
and
they would have
interact,
one
because
or
this directs
maybe
them
2 warnings at the very
to
most.
do
You know,
something
one
specific when
warning,
they
you know,
get
be
there.
nice.
As
Second
soon as it
warning,
raises to the level of probable
like
cause,
threaten to
they're going to
kick
do
them
what
out.
they
The
have
third
to
warning
do.
kicked out.
But before that, they're just really good witnesses. And they're there to provide a community service bridge between the activity of the actors and the community. When those bad people, or not those bad people, but when the situation nullifies itself, who's going to be standing around? Portland is going to be standing around, and they're going to have to be the ones to try and help the persons that were encountered get through this encounter and be whole. We have to remember that it's very important that we don't micromanage Portland Police's every move, and that this is when they come up upon these fluid and dynamic situations. Bottom line, Chief Day rocks. Your Portland Police Bureau rocks. They're doing the right thing. They're doing the right things for the right reasons, for the right way.
That should be second last warning.
They have our interest at heart.
I'm going to ask security if they can identify if there's just a couple of people that are continually disrupting, and if they can, ask them to be removed. If that can't happen and there's continued disruptions, we're going to have to clear the room. Councilor Canal, who's your next invited person?
Thank you so much, Sergeant.
One last point.
ICE is
We
the
can't
problem.
make a
ICE is the
decision,
problem.
or we can't do anything in a vacuum. I was asked really late on Friday night to come here and talk to you, and I was operating in a vacuum. And as soon as I got a chance to talk to some folks, I got a well-rounded knowledge, and I was able to come here and effectively speak to you. We need all of the stakeholders, the police agencies, the associations, all the stakeholders here when we make, when you craft
security,
an ordinance
guys.
that can be
They're
looked
barely
at on a
afraid of the
national
Portland
basis and
police.
go, we want
Think they're
that
going to be
here.
afraid of security at City Hall?
Thank you, Sergeant. And I appreciate the comments. I do think we'll definitely be sharing with you the amendments that are coming forward on this. And if there's anything that you'd like to tell us before we get to the full council, we appreciate it too. Next on our run of show here is bringing up our city attorney, Mike Porter, who I believe, I'm not sure where he's at, but around upstairs. Okay, thank you.
People are just crazy.
Sorry, I'll
Hey,
give him a second.
Porter, Chair, I was wondering, Councilor Canal, can you say again when you were planning to, you keep referencing an amendment that you're bringing that is aligning with the state law, and I recognize the timeline was a little off. Is there a place that we can see that now? I'm having trouble tracking that a little bit.
Yeah, it's posted on where
Okay,
on the
here,
agenda
we're
as
doing
Canal
outside.
1.
Hold on.
Gonna be all
gonna
mad. The
propose
teachers are
that
gonna be
today, though.
mad because they're not
Yep.
gonna get their way.
It's a technical amendment, and it's been written in large part by the person we're about to hear from to make sure that it aligns the
I have,
performance with the state law.
Sunglasses on.
Okay, got it.
And I think, in general, the way we've handled technical amendments as a council has been largely, that the sponsor gets to sort of establish the starting point of conversation. And when there's been a need to change it because of some external force, that we do that. And then we feel free to amend it in the other way, of course. That's sort of the context in which we're putting it forward. Thank you so much for being here, Mike.
Happy to do it, Councilor Canal.
And I want to acknowledge to everybody who's out there, there is a memo. We can acknowledge that it exists, but that counselors have seen. And so I wanted to make sure there was an opportunity here for folks to talk and for Mike, for you to speak. But there is a thing you'll hear us reference that is attorney-client privilege. So I just want to acknowledge that before we get into it. And then we'll get into public testimony very soon after that. There's one more group after this. Yes.
Okay, so I'm happy to answer any questions. I can give a brief overview of what the substance of the ordinance today and sort of its major talking points. So the draft ordinance serves two primary functions. First, it codifies with city code the identification and masking framework reflected in House Bill 4138 that you heard about already, which is pending the governor's signature, while adopting more stringent local requirements governing how law enforcement officers must identify themselves while operating in the city of Portland. Second, it overlays existing Oregon criminal law, specifically statutes governing criminal impersonation and kidnapping, with a structured set of investigative steps and documentary requirements that apply when Portland Police Bureau officers encounter individuals purporting to act as law enforcement. House Bill 4138, among other things, establishes a statewide framework governing officer identification and facial coverings and expressly permits local governments to adopt more stringent requirements in these two areas. The draft ordinance operates within this framework while imposing additional local standards, including the exclusion of certain forms of identification otherwise recognized under state law and the requirement that officers display a first initial and last name on their uniforms. These provisions reflect a policy choice to change the officer identification beyond the statewide baseline, but as anticipated by the language of the House bill. At the same time, the draft ordinance incorporates the subject matter of existing Oregon criminal statutes.
I figured they
and
did.
establishes
Like,
an
yeah.
operational framework governing how officers investigate,
Ridiculous.
verify, and document potential violations of these statutes. This approach is generally not reflected in the criminal law context, where statutes typically define prohibited conduct without prescribing investigatory methodology or documentation requirements at the municipal level, and where investigative practices are instead governed by constitutional standards, state law.
Let's see how that other one's doing. Hold on a sec.
Town Hall Tuesday at 5 p.m. on Climatics channel on YouTube, Climatics TV.
Morning out there. It sounds like there's only 3 people in front of his camera doing their thing, I guess. Let me see if I can make. Are they interrupting him? No, they're not interrupting. I thought they'd be
Any
not
questions
interrupting.
for Mr. Porter?
Public testimony. Let's go.
Thank you. No questions, apparently. Councilor Canal, do you have another?
Yep, last group. I wanted to invite up Sandy Chung from the ACLU, Yasmin Ibarra from the SEIU, as well as we have representatives from PERC and I think online Paccoon as well. This will be our last panel before we get into the public testimony. So thanks everyone for bearing with me. We'll get right to you.
So odd they didn't ask anybody from the federal government.
Good afternoon, counselors. I'm Sandy
even the
Chung.
state
My
government.
pronouns are she and her. I'm the executive
cares?
director of the ACLU of Oregon. On behalf of the ACLU of Oregon and our 52,000 members and donor supporters across the state of Oregon, I'm here in support of the Right to Know Ordinance with the Canal 1 Amendment. Also, my colleagues, Jessica Montavia, our policy
Remember
director,
when the ACLU
and
is actually
Michael
for civil
Abrams, policy
liberties and not
counsel,
just the
who
Democrat
worked on the bill at the state
law
level, are
firm?
here so that they can answer any questions you may have. During the first and second Trump administrations, Portlanders were targeted with extraordinary abuses of power by the federal government, including masked, unidentified federal operatives kidnapping people off our streets. However, when comparing 2020 to current times, what Portlanders have experienced has been night and day. This, in our view, is because under the leadership of the current city council, the mayor and police chief Robert Day, the city of Portland has embraced this basic understanding that trust and transparency between law enforcement and the people they serve is vital to public and community safety, including.
You know, I wonder if you would ask these ACLU people and things like that, how they felt sorry about the past 4 years when Biden was in office, when masked men typically took women and children out of their homes and made them travel a long ways and everything. What about those masked men that said the border's kind of open and everything, Biden's going to let you in? What about those masked men? I wonder if they have any thoughts about those masked men. Sorry, I just had to say that.
Portland police are expected to investigate, which is consistent with their current practices related to ICE activity, and they are expected to address potential violations by government agents or impersonators in appropriate ways that best serve public and officer safety with flexibility and discretion
Coyotes and cartels
when
is
detention
what it's
may be
referring to.
appropriate. We strongly urge the committee and council to adopt the Right to Know ordinance. Thank you for prioritizing trust and transparency in order to create real safety for all Portlanders,
Hey, Tam, how you doing?
including
Nice to
our
see ya.
immigrant and refugee neighbors.
I'm wearing green. I'm wearing green.
Good afternoon. My name is Yasmin Ibarra. I'm the political director for SEIU Local 49. I'm here today speaking on behalf of SEIU Oregon, which represents over 85,000 workers in Oregon and Southwest Washington. Our members are healthcare workers, public employees, home care workers, nursing home workers, janitors, security officers, folks who keep our community functioning every day. I'm here in strong support of the right to know who's policing you ordinance, and the need for this is very clear. Earlier this year, Maria, an SEIU member and U.S. citizen, was driving alone in Salem when she was followed and boxed in by unmarked vehicles with no plates. 4 masked individuals wearing police approached her, and when she didn't respond immediately, they shattered her window, dragged her out, and left her injured after finding her passport. Maria suffered a concussion, a torn rotator cuff, and bruised ribs. And when she called local police, she was told to call FBI. No help, no investigation. No one in our community should experience this kind of fear or uncertainty about who's detaining them, or in Maria's case, injuring them. The state's new Law Enforcement Visibility Act is a strong start, but local governments can go further. This ordinance ensures officers cannot conceal their identities, requires visible ID, and gives local police the ability to verify anyone claiming federal authority and document encounters when it's unclear who's detaining someone. These are simple, common sense protections that are urgently needed. Secret policing has no place in our democracy. And on behalf of our members like Maria and communities we serve, I urge you to vote yes on this ordinance. Thank you.
Good afternoon, counselors. My name is Alyssa Walker-Keller, and I'm the coordinator at PIRC, the Portland Immigrant Rights Coalition. I'm here today to share our support for the Right to Know Who's Policing You ordinance. We are grateful to Councilor Canal and his team for inviting PIRC and other partners in this room to be a part of the review process for the ordinance. Our perspective has been formed by the on-the-ground observations and more than 20,000 phone calls to our hotline since the last year from people looking for resources in Oregon and reporting possible ICE activity. We've borne witness to the confusion and the lack of clarity due to the actions of agents who dress in plain clothes, drive vehicles with no license plates, and of course, cover their faces and do not provide identification. At least 258 detentions have been reported to PIRC in Portland proper since July, making this issue an issue that is very much impacting your constituents. PIRC's incredible dispatchers have told us how challenging it is to receive phone calls from callers who are unsure which agency they are dealing with.
Constituents
Many
aren't
hotline
legally
calls
here.
involve unmarked suspicious vehicles and people, and this uncertainty results in lost time. They shared that police verifying whether someone is a federal agent may help with imposters, like those who were reportedly interrogating young people on the max early last year. And most importantly, it would be helpful to answer the questions of the loved ones left behind. Minutes often mean the difference between transport out of state and access to legal counsel. Having PPB officers able to ascertain with clarity who is involved in a detention or provide documentation of violations would be of great value to the families seeking justice when ICE has broken the law. The reality is that everyday courageous Portlanders are already taking it upon themselves to ask agents who is detaining their neighbors and loved ones here in Portland. Portland police being mandated to do the same and to
He's got a lot of
Alicia
patience. So when Scuba Steve is losing his patience, that means he's had enough of the bullshit. Now that lady is across the street from me, over there whining and bitching and complaining at me, looking at stuff on the ground. What can I get for free? You know? Hey, always picking shit.
Not sure what's going on out there. Losing a signal, I guess, right now.
with me that she never thought that something like that would happen in the place that she had fled to. And so I asked this council move to pass this proposal and make it an ordinance, because if agents are bold enough to kidnap people in broad daylight from our communities, they must be held accountable, and law enforcement agents should have the responsibility to document crimes against Oregonians. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Ira from Pacun online to close this panel out.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ira Coyo Martinez, and I am providing comments on behalf of Pacun, Oregon's Farm Worker Union. At Pacun, we work to empower farm workers and Latinx working families to improve their working and living conditions through community building, organizing, and policy advocacy. I'm here to express strong support for the proposed ordinance requiring clear identification of law enforcement officers. Our members are experiencing a level of fear and uncertainty that is deeply concerning. Farm workers and immigrant families in Oregon are closely watching what is happening across the country and here in our own communities. Reports of masked individuals in tactical gear claiming to be law enforcement have made it increasingly difficult for people to know who they can trust. One of the most common concerns we hear is about encounters with officers whose faces are covered and whose identities are unclear. When law enforcement is not easily identifiable, people cannot determine who they're interacting with or what authority they have. And this creates confusion, fear, and in some cases, real danger. Oregonians should be able to clearly see who's operating in our communities and which agency they represent. Transparency is not optional, it is essential for public safety and trust. Our members are also deeply concerned about impersonators. When officers are allowed to obscure their identities, it creates opportunities for bad actors to pose as law enforcement and commit harm. This is not a hypothetical concern, it is already happening across the country. We have heard directly from community members about the need for accountability. One of our members shared that we don't want anyone to touch us without a warrant signed by a judge. This reflects a broader demand for transparency, due process, and respect. This ordinance takes an important step toward addressing these concerns.
That's a judicial warrant, which is not required if you're here illegally and they see you out on the street without documents. That's all. All they need is an administrative warrant signed by an administrator of ICE. If you're in your home and they need to go into your home to get you, then they need a judicial warrant. Just FYI. Just not sure if you read the Constitution or not, or the basic laws that were Congress initiated.
Is about trust. When people cannot identify law enforcement, trust erodes. When trust erodes, public safety suffers. By passing this ordinance, the city of Portland can affirm its commitment to transparency, accountability, and safety for all of its residents, especially immigrant communities who are being disproportionately impacted today. We urge you to support this measure.
Thank you so much. And just to close out our presentation, there's I wanted to just kind of piggyback off of that, and I've got about a minute left.
Actually, Councilor Zimmerman, is that a legacy hand, or do you have a question for the panel?
Oh, I did have a question for the panel. Thank you, Chair. First off, for those of you who just testified, thanks so much for your work.
Public comment today on this one here. I think they're going to get a full city council vote on it next time or something like that. But my next question is, the TFers that are there after they do the public comment like they usually do, will they try to take over also? There's a lot of older people there in the audience also, that and normie lefties, you know. Will the TFers that are there try to go crazy? Will it, if they have numbers? I don't think they have numbers though, so we'll see. But one in the chat if you think they'll try to cause a nuisance or something like that. Put a 2 in the chat if you think they'll be civilized in front of their elders.
Will be enforced, like what change will happen at the ICE level? Because we have articulated a lot about our local police, our state police, our Portland police, our sheriff. Is there something in this that you're anticipating or hoping that federal officers will also have to follow, or are you under the same, I think, assumption that I am, that we can write it down and it's really a choice whether or not the federal administration follows? I'm just hoping to get a sense for your thoughts here, because I think most of us are understanding that all local is going to follow this, and we all have this great worry that federally they're just going to ignore us. Is that how do you feel similarly to that, or what senses from your organizations or you personally are you feeling with respect to this ordinance and your support for it?
Yeah, good point.
Counselor, if I may, what we've seen
Please.
across the country is when there are more checks and balances and both
See what I mean?
governments, but
Older
also
crowds,
organizations and
religious
people
crowd,
responding, that actually
older
has been
blue-haired crowd.
effective in checking the actions of ICE. And so one of the things I wanted to note is, for example, in February, the detentions that were recorded were significantly less. And we attribute that not just to the protest and opposition of everyday people and organization to ICE actions, but also to court actions like by Innovation Law Lab, where they got a preliminary injunction against warrantless arrests. And so oftentimes as the ACLU of Oregon, we get to ask this question, are the courts gonna hold? And we've seen the courts hold. We've seen the rule of law hold. But that means that every person and every body and every government
Or could it
has
be,
to do what it can and what it has the power to do. And so I think the beauty of this ordinance
or it could be the fact that certain areas get surged in certain times and everything. So they need to pull resources from other areas to the certain surge places. Maybe that's why there have not been as many detainees at that point there. Maybe you use common sense before you say stupid things.
a clear framework with which to act with LEVA and act against federal abuses of power.
So thank you, Sandy. So when you say it gives clear guidance to Portland, you mean with respect to when a Portland officer does or doesn't mask? But I think maybe you're extending that. It gives clear guidance to how they will
Engage
I
with
think it's a
federal.
Go ahead, please.
Sorry to interrupt. It also gives clear guidance about how they will engage, how Portland police officers will engage with federal agents who engage in these violations of masking and lack of identification. And I think
It's
this
really,
is
really helpful to hear that.
No.
I want to, it sounds like what we are going to need is, right, we're going to have this law on the books, and that's a
Now
good
they want
thing. We'll have
identification.
local, we'll have state.
Now they want
and
identification.
the courts will hold is the meaning.
Or
We
you guys
know we're
watching
going
the
to get
Safe
challenged,
Act?
and we think we've got.
They don't want
something that is
identification
challengeable and holdable. I want to make sure.
for
and I think
citizenship.
ACL is helpful to hear about this. But
They
is that
want
kind of where
identification
where your thoughts are at?
yes,
for
Counselor.
federal employees.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. On something that Ira brought up, we have just the next slide, please. This is not a hypothetical risk as it relates to impersonation. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but I did just want to show some of the particular examples that we've seen around when we do simply accept that someone saying that they are ICE is ICE, or any law enforcement, without double checking it, without looking for any particular type of evidence to that. We've seen reports of sexual assault. We've seen reports of attempting to enter a dorm room. We've seen reports of fake traffic stops. We've seen the speak.
We've seen reports of people pretending to be Portland police. We've seen reports of people pretending to be Multnomah County police. We've seen reports of being Oregon State police. Yes, things like that happen. Crazy people are out there that want to pretend to be something they're not. You understand? Wanting to be something that they're not is a bad thing. And I'm not saying other things you guys might sort of think that I'm saying, but I might be saying those things. But yeah, when you're something else that you're not pretending to be, it's not exactly a good thing all the time, is it?
Look into it and don't simply accept someone claiming to be law enforcement while masked up and doing.
Look into it. Don't always believe that somebody's saying something that they are when they're not that thing, Don't always believe them, just because they say there's something, you don't have to believe them. You can look into it, don't look too deep into it, if you know what I mean. But
some of the people who will be involved in implementing this ordinance, if it passes,
you guys understood what I was kind of referencing, right?
To limit what they have to say. But I'd like to hear from DCA Causey and from Assistant Chief Hughes and from Sergeant Aaron Schmautz, just to offer their thoughts on the legislation and any operational issues, the suggestions they have about it.
Oh, sorry, you guys want to see ground zero. It's still live out there, right? Yeah, it's still live.
Mr. Kazi.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Bob Causey, Deputy City Administrator of Public Safety. In a time when the political climate has amplified the public's concerns over unconstitutional and unethical policing by federal agents, we find that identification, visibility, and accountability are topics of notable interest and importance on all levels. We have seen that public sentiment reflected in legislative action being taken by both state and local representatives with a nod to Representative Chai-Chi's Law Enforcement Accountability and Visibility Act and to Councillor Canal's proposed ordinance that we're discussing today. As Deputy City Administrator for the Public Safety Service Area, I want to be clear in speaking to a worried and rightfully upset community that myself and the bureaus I represent are in agreement. Law enforcement must practice accountable, constitutional policing to maintain public trust. And we recognize that breaches of that trust erode both tangible and perceived feelings of safety. I agree with Councillor Canal that our community has the right to know who is policing them. Under Oregon state law, officers are required to self-identify upon request from a member of the public. And agencies are required retroactively to provide a name and DPSST number for an officer as requested by a member of the public. In the development of the Law Enforcement Accountability and Visibility Act, PPB's practices and policies around masking and identification, as we've discussed earlier today or heard mentioned earlier today, were described by legislators as gold standard. I think it's also important to note that state law already establishes a reasonable suspicion standard for investigating offenses like kidnapping and misrepresentation of an officer. PPB has been instrumental in preventing violence, protecting First Amendment rights, and providing expert and witness testimony in crucial lawsuits against federal overreach. The testimony of PPB leadership was key in obtaining injunctions against some of the most concerning federal actions, including the attempted deployment of the Oregon National Guard.
Look at that
I say this because public safety
Australian flag.
wants to
Happy
be
St. Patrick-
a trailblazing
Patrick.
partner in the development of meaningful policy. To that end, I think it's important to respectfully bring up some concerns. I want to express my concern over the lack of time that the Public Safety Service Area had been given to review and provide input on this ordinance. Previously, when this item came before this committee, our service area was informed. However, since January, we were not actively engaged in the ongoing development of this legislation. Without our insight being incorporated throughout the development, it fails to be meaningfully actionable, as will be outlined shortly by Assistant Chief Hughes. The other concern I have is regarding fiscal responsibility. The ordinance states that there is minimal budget impact and in fact asserts that PPB resources would cover additional costs. However, during the previous CAPS committee meeting in January, we shared that there would be a non-insignificant cost that PPB would incur to add identifiers to all external gear in order to adhere to this new standard. The estimated cost ranges from $51,000 only to replace name tags to over $500,000 for all.
I'm curious. Let's say if they try to do this and they're trying to say, I need your identification before you kind of arrest that illegal immigrant, undocumented worker. But as they're doing that, the undocumented worker pushes the federal agent away and runs away. That's a crime. You're pushing a federal officer, any kind of law enforcement officer. That would have to be even a city crime. Will that city police officer help chase that undocumented worker since he saw a crime right in front of them? Would they be required to do that? Once he verifies he's an ICE agent, will that police officer follow through on his duty or not?
All of that.
and PPB policy already aligns closely with that framework. And Councilor Kamau, I want to call you out and appreciate your comments earlier regarding how Portland
They
Police
keep
Bureau
interrupting. They keep
does
interrupting.
follow our own policies and
They keep
directives.
interrupting.
So one concern
Kick
is
him
whether
out.
this ordinance would
Please be
create
quiet.
a meaningful new
That's the-
public safety outcome or simply add a
Warning them
separate
will
local
not
layer
work.
on top of existing state law and current Bureau policy.
Kick them out.
I'll highlight this aspect again. When you spoke earlier about the Bureau currently does not have a masking policy, you're right, we don't. We are operating in alignment with state law.
They're literally testing them to see if they get kicked out. And they're not getting kicked out. Eventually, they'll get to the point where they'll just simply take over the meeting if you're not going to kick them out.
Advise that detention authority remains governed by the Fourth Amendment and Article 1, Section 9. Officers cannot be required to detain based on a checklist of predetermined criteria, and concepts like credible indicia have to function as factors within a totality of the circumstances analysis, not as automatic triggers for detention. Third, there are jurisdictional limits. Federal officers operate under federal authority and under the Supremacy Clause. The city cannot regulate federal operations through city code. That means some of the conduct that appears to motivate the ordinance may fall outside the city's actual authority to control, which risks placing expectations on PPB that cannot be applied to everyone operating in the city. Fourth are some operational concerns.
Brett, how you doing?
The
Nice to
ordinance
see ya.
creates additional documentation reporting, verification requirements that would fall primarily on PPB officers and supervisors. That means more administrative work and less time
I'll
available.
be right back.
for
Let me
direct
know if I
public
miss
safety
anything.
work.
Let me know if I miss any interruptions.
It
or
also
something.
creates potential uncertainty when Portland officers are working with regional and mutual aid
Make sure
partners
Folograms
under
are
a
PDFs
different local
also.
standard.
Make
And
it
I'd like to
a little bit
highlight that
here.
those mutual aid agreements are just starting to come back into play after a rough 2020.
Big enough.
Fifth, there are safety and implementation concerns. The ordinance's facial covering restrictions and documentation requirements affect working conditions and officer safety. And the city attorney's office identified potential bargaining issues associated with that. We'll probably hear about that soon. So in summary, our concerns are about duplication of existing law and policy, constitutional limits, federal jurisdiction, operational burden, and whether the ordinance creates more uncertainty than practical benefit. And one more piece I wanted to highlight. I really appreciate the state reps for being here today and testifying about the state law that they so carefully crafted. But the one point that was asked that really didn't receive a clear answer was, why doesn't the state law enact similar things regarding reasonable suspicion and authority to detain? I think that's important, and I think that it was looked at, and I don't understand why it wasn't in the state law and why it is in the city law. I think we have to take a look at that and understand why. Thank you.
Sergeant Schmautz.
Excuse me. For the record, my name is Aaron Schmautz. I'm a registered lobbyist and the president of the Oregon Coalition of Police and Sheriffs. I'm also the president of the Portland Police Association, our city's police union. Meetings like today are always kind of interesting to me because someone I'm fond of often says that problems unite and solutions divide. I've spent the last, I don't know how long ago was September, that many months, dealing with an existential thing I never really imagined I would, which is navigating very complex conversations about law enforcement with law enforcement. I've spent time here in DC with local officers and also representing our state, trying to navigate the differences in roles, the different venues in which these conversations are placed, and frankly, how to solve some of these problems in the right venue. I have comments I want to prepare. Councilor Murillo, watching you navigate, as your own, as an immigrant, navigating the very hard conversations and expectations the community has, and also your role as a counselor, like that's really kind of what I'm talking about. The very facts of trying to navigate your own personal feelings, but also navigating the laws that you have access to and the power you have and how you use that. That's what I'm talking about. It's very difficult. The legislative session ended this last week, included progress on several critical public safety issues, and I was encouraged to see that lawmakers engaged thoughtfully, proactively, and productively, including passing a statewide masking and identification law. the Law Enforcement Accountability and Visibility Act, or LEVA for short. It strengthens transparency, visibility, and accountability for law enforcement across Oregon. Senator Przanski, Representative Chaichi, Representative Choatson, the Oregon ACLU, the Oregon League of Cities all participated with a united front of both ORCOPS, which is the largest organization of police officers and sheriffs in the state, and the Oregon Chiefs and Sheriffs organizations in identifying current practice and collaborating with stakeholders to address community concerns and strengthen and streamline masking and law enforcement identification policies. During this legislative process, PPB's existing policies were widely considered, as has been stated, I think 15 times today, the gold standard for the state. The goal of this new law is to provide statewide consistency so community interactions with law enforcement are predictable and constitutional. Community conversations clearly indicate that this is a central priority for Oregonians, and we were thrilled to be part of this important work, and I cannot say thank you enough to Representative Chaichi and Representative Choatson for the leadership on this issue. LEVA went into effect immediately, or will go into effect when the governor signs it. And now all Oregonians can know what to expect regardless of which law enforcement agency they encounter. This is critical. As a president of the Oregon Coalition of Police and Sheriffs, I know that other agencies are going to align their policies to match LEVA's standards. In conversations this week, I learned that not all of council had read yet the new statewide law, and yet today we're considering creating a different standard for Portland. The ordinance before you today will break the accord created by LEVA. And I will note, this always happens when we testify. I have not yet been able to review the amendments, and we will need time to do so to figure out where that lands. For example, residents could experience different law enforcement masking and identification requirements depending on which side of the street you are at our city's borders. Deep in East Portland, which was my district for quite some time, the city's borders follows the sewer line. There's different places where you are. But again, this is a very big issue. For instance, if you're interacting with Portland Police or Gresham Police or Multnomah County Sheriffs, depending on where you're standing, the rules could be different. There are even homes within the city limits, but are outside of PPB's jurisdictions. And
I know what it probably is. Some senior citizen centers, things like that. They do little hobbies, things like that. They go to the malls or bingo clubs or something like that. I think today that the liberal senior center in the neighborhood decided to go to City Hall with little signs there. They used to do their little hobby of the day thing. I'm guessing because if you look at that room, there's, 20, 30 people there that are 65 plus that have signs.
EPA remains committed to bargaining in good faith under state law. And as I've stated repeatedly in writing to Councilor Canal and the city, no less than 6 times since that September email, this council venue is not the place for bargaining. That occurs at the bargaining table, again, not in this chamber. Adding language to an ordinance saying that bargaining can occur afterwards is insufficient and is in fact unlawful. Bargaining must occur before an ordinance is passed. Attempting to write city law while ignoring state labor law will create chaos. Council enacts legislation, but what is being proposed here isn't in fact an administrative policy for the police bureau that is outside of this council's purview. Any outcome here will still require mandatory bargaining and will set an ordinance, not policy. Policy must be bargained, reviewed, and in Portland, it must be reviewed by the Federal Department of Justice. To repeat, passing this ordinance will require PPB to negotiate the underlying and outgoing policy with the United States Department of Justice, as opposed to allowing the chief of police to enact state law and ensure the Bureau is compliant. If the city has concerns about the federal government, federal courts are the proper venue, and we've seen those outcomes recently. If it has concerns about partner agencies, we saw what we can do by working with state legislature to pass laws with stakeholder input. If it has concerns about its employees, you bargain. Not from the dais, not on social media, but at the bargaining table, which is already set. And I will see the city's representatives there on Friday. And at the risk of causing problems, I will also offer a solution, even though I know they tend to cause problems. We have 180 days from the date that the governor signs this bill to enact it. You should tell the chief to enact it. And 181 days from there, we should all get together and look at the outcome and see if our community still has concerns. And I'll pay for the catering to sit down and have the conversation to ensure that we keep Portlanders safe the way that they want to be kept safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. Councilor Canal.
Yeah, it's a good
Thanks
point
everyone for being here. Thanks for being a part of this. I'll keep it brief because I know there are people waiting to testify. I just wanted to highlight and I, again, apologies for not being able to reference this specifically, that the conversation for AC Hughes's comments relate to the last full paragraph on page 7 and the last full paragraph, the second half of it on page 9, and the conclusion of the document on page 13 of the memo that I can acknowledge exists but not go into detail on, which is that legal memo. And I just wanted to reference that. I do appreciate the point about the cost. And if there's a $51,000 cost to make up, we'll continue to have that conversation as to whether and how we can make that not an impediment to achieving public safety here. But I do appreciate everything that you brought, and I have other questions, but I'll keep them for discussion.
Thank you, Councilman Gall. Chief Hughes, I just wanted to follow up on something you said about jurisdictional issues, and just wanted to give you a chance to clarify. You were saying that when we're working with jurisdictional partners, this legislation, I think, might create some issues. I just wanted to elaborate on that.
Yeah, so in 2 ways that could create issues. One, we routinely work with federal partners on issues. In fact, some of the downtown livability things with the open air drug dealing that was going on is attributed to those partnerships. And the requirements of the appearance of the federal agents when they're with us could present challenges there as in regards to what they wear and how they operate and the specifics that they go by. And we'd have to have an exception for every single time that happens and a documentation for every single time that happens. And it happens regularly. We work with task force officers almost daily in Portland. The other aspect has to do with the partnerships that we have with outside agencies that come to assist us. Nobody would have ever imagined that we would have had 130 days of unrest or however many days it was that really stretched the Portland Police Bureau thin. And that also stretched our
I could have imagined
agreements with outside partners and their ability to come and work with Portland. And frankly, some of them refuse to come help. And over time, under Chief Day's leadership, he's done amazing work at building those relationships back up. And an ordinance like this would present challenges with regards to outside agencies coming to help us.
I actually want you to elaborate on that. I mean, my thought is that if we simply required of officers working with us from other jurisdictions what the state law requires, I'd assume that wouldn't be a problem. Are you saying that if we're imposing requirements as far as masking identification that go above and beyond the state law, then our partner organizations might be less likely to come and join us because their folks will be saying, wait a minute, I might want to follow the Portland law?
That's correct. And that's one of the benefits of having a state law. So there's a common operational understanding.
Thank you. Councilor Murillo.
Thank you, Councilor Novick. I just wanted to clarify the record a bit before we go into community testimony. As we heard from some of the legal experts that came earlier and from the legislator who actually wrote the state policy, this local one will not break the accord. And I want to be very clear about that they are complementary policies. That's why they are being proposed. I also, frankly, heard some contradictory testimony as far as was there time for the police union to give feedback or was there not? Because there was talk about extensively emailing back and forth with Councilor Canal's office, which I think I am aware of and did happen as far as negotiating the policy. We've also heard this issue in committee twice now. This is going to be the 3rd time that we're going over this policy with edits made to accommodate the state policy. And I assure you, to the members of the public watching this, that if a policy did nothing, then there wouldn't be law enforcement opposition to it. The reason that this matters is because it will have an impact for our immigrant communities. We have limited time at this committee, and I suspect that with all of the testimony, we will not get to a vote today, let alone to extensively go through all of the amendments that were brought forward last minute. I am curious, colleagues, if you were contacted at all by the head of the police union in the past few weeks regarding this policy and what was discussed, if so. That's to my fellow counselors on this committee.
She's trying to call somebody out.
Particularly over the past few days, I have had some conversations with people in law enforcement, including DCA Causey and Chief Day and Chief Hughes and Sergeant Smouts and a variety of other people.
And what was said
and I
in
think
those
that
conversations?
It's their
Counselor,
conversations.
I don't think, if we're calling in retired sergeants from Clackamas County to opine on this measure, I don't think that it's untoward to talk to serving sergeants in the Portland Police Bureau about this measure. And I would like to get on to public testimony. Councilor Canal.
Yeah, I'd like to
They don't like him.
just answer the question briefly, which is yes, I did get a chance to engage, which I'm grateful for, because as was noted, there was some radio silence there for a long period of time. And I have a document here that I can circulate showing all of the engagement that we've done with Public Safety Service Area, PPB leadership, and as well the PPA, as well as the details of that for my colleagues. But I also want to get to public testimony.
He's trying to play mediator.
Before we move on to public testimony, I want to briefly mention 4 amendments that I'm planning to bring forward. One is that as I read the current language Councilor Canal proposed, it could be that a Portland police officer who goes up to verify that a federal agent is a federal agent and sees that they have the identification required by the state law, that they're wearing a unique identifier and a badge, that the Portland police officer then have to either to demand additional documentation or else launch an investigation. Councilor Canal tells me that's not the intent. My amendment would simply say that if a Portland police officer sees that an alleged federal agent is bearing the identification required by state law, they can take that as evidence that this really is a federal officer, and based on that, the totality of the circumstances, doesn't have to launch any further investigation. I also am concerned about the requirement in Councilor Canal's proposal that each exception to the mask policy be individually, member by member, authorized and documented. And my concern there is that on a really cold day, I don't want 200 police officers to have to call up and say, hey, Sarge, as you noticed, it's 13 degrees out. I'm wrapping a scarf around my chin. Okay, again, if the restaurant does not start, we'll have to clear the room. There may be that there's, it may be that there's a way to address that, but I think that, for right now, I would remove that documentation requirement. And finally, I do think that it could be problematic for us to try to impose requirements on mask identification other than those in state law and anybody else operating within the city of Portland, because as Chief Hughes said, we occasionally need to call on our local jurisdictional partners to come in and help us out. And I don't want to do something that would prevent them from doing that. And again, I think their state law requirements are pretty good. Finally, there's Councilor Canal, did you already talk about the criminal penalties issue? I think we're both bringing an amendment on that.
Yeah, mine's in the.
Okay. Having said that, let's move on to public testimony.
Here we go.
And we hear the first people on the list.
Thank you, Co-Chair. And if I may just offer a couple housekeeping items. For those signed up to testify, just a reminder that each testifier will receive 1 minute and 30 seconds. For those testifying in person, the timer is displayed on the monitor in front of the testimony table. For those testifying virtually, the timer is displayed in Zoom. The timer will ding twice, once when there's 30 seconds left and a second time when your time is up. We did receive a few last minute cancellations, and I see some members who were invited testimony were also included in this list. So if you were invited testimony and hear your name called, feel free to disregard. And last, before you begin your testimony, please state your name for the record. Thank you. First up, we have Anne Marie Bakestrom, Marcus Mundy, Devin Ruiz, Rochelle Chase Miller,
smaller just because there's
Heather Hellman.
Over here, maybe? Down here.
My name is Tyler Fellini. I'm speaking in place of Anne Marie. So good afternoon, counselors. My name is Tyler Fellini. I'm the executive director of and a registered lobbyist for Portland Office of Justice. I'm here to urge this committee to pass Councilor Canal's ordinance and to send it to the full council immediately. In 2020, our streets became a laboratory for state terror. We all remember the chilling sight of roving, unmarked vans abducting Portlanders off our streets at the height of the federal invasion. For many Portlanders, that terror has not vanished. A fresh wave of kidnappings by masked, anonymous agents has driven families into hiding, forced students out of classrooms, and compelled workers to carry passports just to feel safe walking to the store. We can
These people
all
that were
agree
trying to burn
that
down
Portlanders
federal
deserve
buildings,
to live
those
without
people?
fear. But true safety is impossible when people are snatched off of street corners by anonymous armed actors. When law enforcement officers hide behind tactical masks and unique identifiers accessible only via police databases, they are operating as a paramilitary force. They are choosing to be unaccountable to the public they claim to serve. While the state's HB 4138 provides a starting point, Portland must set a higher standard for our own protection. If ICE or any federal agency claims they are above our local laws, the burden of proof rests entirely on them. Secret police are the tools of authoritarianism. They have no place in Portland. I would once again like to remind everybody here that the HB 4138 is a floor, not a ceiling. Accountability starts with visibility, and it's time we give our neighbors the tools to defend our own rights. Please vote to move this forward. Thank you.
Whack job. I don't see a whole lot of youngsters. You see, like I said, look at the average age out there.
Hello, I'm Heather Hellman, and I serve as pastor of a congregation in District 4. I would
Average
like to
hair
see you
color.
pass this resolution today to know who is policing you. It's overdue. ICE agents and people cosplaying as ICE agents have already been terrorizing our communities and eroding trust with local law enforcement. I see this as I serve weekly as a chaplain outside the ICE facility, where I have repeatedly been injured by ICE as I stood peacefully. If they are that violent in very public space, imagine what they are doing out in our neighborhoods and behind closed doors. We need to help hold ICE accountable. We need to identify them and make sure they aren't imposters, because I've experienced them too. The people we refer to merely as counter-protesters have an agenda to harm. I've seen them target the vulnerable.
Counter
I showed
protesters?
students a picture of these imposters that stand outside the facility, and the students thought they were ICE agents because they looked exactly as ICE agents do in the neighborhoods. I've also witnessed the tension the feds are causing for our local police. It's adding to mistrust that our community has for them. This ordinance and the ways it goes beyond LEVA will help to rebuild the trust, which will make our police and community safer. Most importantly, our immigrant neighbors want this ordinance. A resolution is not enough to protect them. I urge you to vote for this today because the threats, especially to our most vulnerable, are only getting worse. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. I'm sure she has a big rainbow in front of her church door.
Chairs Kanal and Novick and members of the committee, my name is Devin Ruiz. I live in District 2, and I'm a registered lobbyist for Next Step. We are a local nonprofit organization working to amplify the voice and leadership of diverse young people across the state. We are horrified by the ongoing terror that ICE agents have inflicted upon Oregon's immigrant communities, including young people a part of our organization, and know that there needs to be immediate action taken to bring increased transparency and accountability. ICE, federal agents, and law enforcement must be identifiable and accountable to Portlanders. As such, we are in strong support of Right to Know Who's Policing ordinance and urge you to finalize and pass this out of committee. At a statewide level, Next Up Action Fund was one of the many organizations that supported House Bill 4138, which passed through the Oregon State Legislature this session. This law sets the floor, but explicitly says local governments can set more stringent policies. For the last several months, Councilor Kanal and this committee have been working to refine this ordinance, and now it's time to listen to the call of the state legislature and set the stringent policy needed. Throughout the time that this ordinance has been discussed in this committee, I have heard Portland Police Bureau say this would be difficult to implement due to the support the city depends on from officers outside of PPB who would refuse to identify themselves. With the passing of HB 4138, we need to be done with excuses surrounding implementation challenges. We need to pass a city ordinance that mandates that law enforcement be transparent and accountable to the public. Our communities have a right to know who's policing them. Community safety can only be achieved when there is opportunity to build public trust with law enforcement. Thank you.
Once more for Marcus Mundy and Rochelle Chase Miller. Okay, our next set of 5 is Reverend Dick Nystrom, Reverend Sarah Fisher, Lynn Smouse Lopez, Allison Killeen, Junha Kim.
Just a guess, guys. There's probably some far lefty young people there, but there's a balcony area Are they all up in the balcony area and letting the older normie types or whatever be down there and the older ones upstairs?
And a grandfather and living in District 2.
Wonder-
When I was a young boy, I remember watching on CBS Evening News as police officers and their dogs viciously attacked black protesters in Alabama. It wouldn't be long before the entire country was shocked by the brutality of such state-sanctioned cruelty.
Democrats think
It wasn't so many years
later.
later in Christmas of 65 that I traveled to Barnwell, South Carolina to work alongside other civil rights workers. We were there to encourage blacks to register to vote. But time and again found ourselves listening as people described their fear of the KKK and the police in the segregated South. It was a story they knew so well about state-sanctioned cruelty. And then not so many years ago, my wife and I served as Peace Corps volunteers in Southern Africa, where we heard story after story of life lived under apartheid in South Africa, day after day, year after year, witnessing the violence of state-sanctioned cruelty. So many stories, and if I had time, I could tell so many more. But never did I imagine the time would come when I'd have such stories to tell about state-sanctioned cruelty within my own community of Portland. For indeed, that is exactly what is happening here today. State-sanctioned cruelty as mass federal agents roam our neighborhoods, shredding the very fabric of our civil society. It is shameful and it must be stopped. And I'm convinced that a very necessary step is to ban the masks that hide the faces of the ICE agents who are striking terror in our hearts and minds.
Just FYI, he was talking about South Carolina in 1965, right? Just going through this thing here. The governors of that states, 59 through 63, Democrat. 63 through 65, another Democrat. 65 through 71, another Democrat. 71 through 75, another Democrat. Just FYI. During the time where they thought they were helping people.
Vice versa. And this ordinance is critical for keeping our whole community safe. Without codified transparency and accountability, there is no true community safety. In 1967, my parents protested the Vietnam War in New York City. The police stood by while counter-demonstrators began to throw things into the crowd of peace marchers. This concerned my dad, and he wrote down the badge numbers of several officers. All of a sudden, 3 of them jumped on him. "Get the paper," they shouted. They had the note card. He had the note card in his hand. One of New York's finest bit him in the thumb to retrieve the card. I remember him coming home with a bloody bandage on his hand. The officers were never charged. My father and his community were not safe because he could not identify the officers he felt were failing to keep the peace. I like to think that that was then, and this is now, that we've come a long way since 1967, but it is still true that none of us is safe if we cannot know the identity of those who have the power to arrest and harm fellow citizens. Thank you so much.
I'm Reverend Lynn Smouse Lopez. I live in District 2 and I serve a small community, United Church of Christ in District 4. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this ordinance. I think it is so important. As I've spent, as has many of the clergy here, hours outside. I'm supposed to be retired, but that's my job that I don't get paid for, around food banks and outside the ICE building and outside the federal court building, accompanying people, trying to pretend like I had any power if ICE agents come and try to arrest them. And I can't share enough of the tension, the terror that they have, and the thanks I have gotten from people who feel they can go to the food bank to get food. They can do what they have to do because they feel I'm protecting them. Well, I tell you, it's a tension that I'd never expected to experience myself, and I'm not in danger. But this
mayor of New York City at the time, the other lady was talking about, the Democrat, and mayor was in charge of the police department. So FYI.
The person who is law enforcement and not think of them as a masked
Tina, how you doing?
robot or something else.
Yeah, not Ground Zero still out there somewhere. It's hard to put his thing up there, but he's still outside that area too. A lot of Unity churches and things like that.
And I want to tell you a story about why I'm in support of this ordinance.
Another
3
story.
years
Oh
ago, when I
boy.
started this role at Salt and Light, one of the first people who I met
It's
was
Salt and Light.
Mariana. She and her 3-year-old daughter were attending an event at church where I had also brought my 3-year-old son. And as our children played together, we talked about what it might look like for our worship services to center our children. Mariana joined a leadership team, and together we developed this child-centered service. It still goes on monthly, the third Sunday of the month, except one thing.
Is this an advertisement for her church?
Mariana no longer comes to services because Mariana is afraid of being kidnapped by ICE. Mariana doesn't come to church anymore. She's had to stop working. She cannot take her daughter to school. She cannot take her daughter to the park. And she only leaves her home for the most essential outings. Her absence has left a tear in the fabric of our community and in so many communities like ours. So this is why I support this bill, because we need to know specifically who specifically is kidnapping our community members and specifically who is terrorizing our community members out of the fabric of our community.
Do we need to know who here is illegal or not illegal? Undocumented workers? Do we need to know that?
It's not the police who are to do this work.
Not we, but the federal government at least.
This is what it looks like to be the gold standard. So I support this ordinance and I look forward to continuing to work with you on it.
Hello, my name is Junha Kim and I live and work in District 2. I am a pastor at Westminster Presbyterian Church in Portland, and I'm here to demonstrate my strong support for the
He's been to
right
ICE
to
too,
know
hasn't he?
who's
I think he was
policing
at
you
ICE in that one
ordinance.
church event.
I'm a first-generation immigrant from Korea and have been a naturalized citizen for over 15 years. I was raised by and have lived with communities made up of immigrants from countries all around the world. And I heard from many of these testimonies, both in favor and against this ordinance, using the phrase fear and uncertainty. And I want to name that fear and uncertainty is a fear and uncertainty that immigrant communities have had to navigate for generations. Because that fear and uncertainty is not only because there is a lack of transparency and accountability from the law enforcement agencies, but because those law enforcement agencies are violently detaining, kidnapping families from their homes. Myself and other immigrant communities are asking for this policy because it is simply an alleviation of this fear and uncertainty. One tool that we might be able to use in alleviating that fear and combating that uncertainty ourselves. Because the fear of being detained, the fear of being kidnapped, the fear of being sent to another state, the uncertainty of whether or not a child's father comes home, the uncertainty of driving without your passport, the uncertainty of whether or not I carry around my correct documentation, including my passport, every
Which
day.
you're supposed to do if you're
And
an
it's clear
immigrant.
from this hearing, as it has been for many decades,
If you're not a
that
citizen, you
law
have to carry
enforcement
it
wants
around with
little
you.
to do as
You're
possible to
legal
protect me.
residents.
And so this policy
know
will be
that.
at least one more tool I can use and immigrant communities can use to stand up for themselves so that they can try to hold the law enforcement agencies accountable themselves. Because again, as Reverend Allison named, if not the police, then who? Thank you.
The news reporters are.
Next,
Oh, there's
we
already one
have
camera in there.
Allison Miller, Jasmine Sprague,
Do the news people know
Yaneli
something that we
Carranza,
don't? Were they informed that
Josh
something might happen
Dunham,
at this meeting?
Christina Saldivar.
Usually that's probably Fox 12. I'm guessing already in there. I'm guessing the locals channel 6 or 8 probably just went in there also. Are they aware of some sort of potential protest at City Hall? Or do they just
Hello,
assume?
I am Reverend Allison Miller, and I serve as the Senior Minister of First Unitarian Portland, located in downtown in District 2. I'm here to give my full support to the right to know who is policing you ordinance. I'm speaking up as a pastor who counsels people not born in this country who are fearful to go about the ordinary business they have a right to engage in for fear of being snatched.
All right, back in 2020, guys, when Safeway employees and nurses and things like that were requiring you to put a mask on, I guess it would have been okay for us to get their names and numbers and identification and everything and all that stuff. Since they were kind of policing us, right? Policing us, you have to do this. They're kind of requiring us to do certain things. We, as citizens, should have been able to know that they were authorized to do that. How do we know you're a nurse? You're just wearing an outfit. I don't see it say anywhere that you're a nurse. Where'd you get your diploma? Huh? Where is it?
We need to work together to restore trust. Unmasking and identity verification is required for this. I am speaking up to voice the values of democracy, which include transparency, accountability, and following just and reasonable laws. All of us engaged in public service, me, you, police officers, we all exercise authority with accountability. You cannot have one without the other. And finally, I speak as someone who has counseled sexual assault victims. This is happening. People are posing as ICE officers and getting away with terrifying bad acts. And finally, I speak as someone.
What about the third of the women that went from South America to North America that were assaulted by people that they thought were their friends and things like that were helping them travel all that time, that likely were wearing masks in a lot of cases there? What about those situations that were allowed to happen and nobody decided to kind of call things out? What about that 1/3 of women that were attacked? But yeah, let's forget about that stuff if you want to talk about these attacks, which are all bad, but goodness gracious, they just pick and choose.
Essential ordinance.
Good afternoon, counselors. I am the Reverend Joshua Dunn. I'm a local pastor and a resident in District 1. Thank you, Counselor Canal, for bringing forth this ordinance to demask ICE and law enforcement in the city of Portland. I'm here today to say wholeheartedly that I insist you should pass this ordinance out of committee for the whole city council to discuss and vote on. I believe you should do this because Portland should be a city where secret police not be allowed to roam and harass our residents. As a resident of East.
All right, you get the idea what he's going to say. Just the same thing the other people said. Let's see what Ground Zero's got going
So
here.
I'm assuming that like 5 o'clock is going to be the cutoff point. Oh my God, there's a lady screaming.
Oh my God! Don't use the word in vain.
I know there's like
There's your teepers.
by emotions, yep, not logic and common sense and sovereignty. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, as in follow the laws of your government. Pretty much straightforward. They're right out of the mouth of Jesus. But no, they don't want to listen to him.
Zoo bear over there.
Okay. Is that enough of that? 1 or 2 teefers outside. News reporter getting ready to do a local shot there,
Fake
probably.
news?
Probably.
And discuss it as a full city council. Thank you.
Time that right.
Good afternoon, counselors. My name is Jasmine Sprague. I live, I work, I play, I worship, I eat, and I shop in District 1. My children attend school in District 1, and I'm speaking today in support of the Right to Know Who is Policing You ordinance. As a community organizer with a Protestant church in East County, when I say that I live, work, eat, play, worship, and shop in District 1, I really mean it. As a hearing impaired person, people covering their mouths makes me not able to understand what they're saying.
Inside or
I need
outside?
people's lips. I am not the only hearing impaired person who needs lips. As a mother with children who attend school at two of the most diverse schools in Oregon, where 35 languages are spoken within those school walls every day. Can you name 35 languages? 35 languages and those 35 different words for police or officer or immigration enforcement. My children and their peers have the right to know who is holding a position of authority over them. My children and their
I'm guessing, Angry, that when they go over the amendments, like what's the consequences, things like that, the leftists are going to say, yes, you need to arrest them if they don't give their identification. And the other guy, the common sense guy, will say you can cite them or make a notification of it or something like that, or something like that, at that point there, or watch them or something like that. But yeah, like I should try to arrest a federal agent. Good luck. Oh, hold on.
strangers when they demand that they listen to them. We don't. And in fact, we teach and we preach the exact opposite. I support the right to know who is policing you ordinance because I cannot and will not teach my children or the communities I organize with to trust adults wielding authority from behind a mask.
Put that much
Be quiet.
crap on your face.
Yeah, applaud with jazz hands. Please go ahead.
Your warnings aren't going to help these people.
My name is
Kick
Yanidou,
them
and I'm a
out.
community organizer with Together Lab. I support Councillor Canal's masking ordinance. The saddest memory I hold of my family came last year in October when we got a knock on the door and a dark figure wearing a normal clothing and a black hat stood outside. In a time of racial profiling, regardless of citizenship, we immediately thought the worst. But it turned out to be a kid just looking for a different apartment. When I turned, my brother was in a room caring for my then 1.5-year-old and 7-month-old baby. In another room, I saw my family sitting on the edge of the bed
A scary story was not a scary story.
in fear, thinking it was going to be their last day in their home after being here for 35 years. I have had many family members and my own partner who worked in clean energy and served in the US military lose their jobs overnight and stay home in fear. I went to a local university. I worked in policy, direct services. I was one of the navigators who distributed rental assistance funds during COVID to those who most needed it. We thought we did everything right. And yet somehow overnight, I became the sole breadwinner and I struggled to even feed my babies. This story reflects many of the stories I hear from your community members who are immigrants or just people of color. They tell us stories of fear regardless of immigration status, losing family members or breadwinners to kidnappings, and children having nightmares of mass people taking away their parents or kidnapping them on their way to school.
Screen for it.
What we need are wins in a time where we are losing everything. This policy will make it so we are not scared of knocks on doors, so we aren't scared to go out to church, to go to the emergency room, and to stop having nightmares of mass agents kidnapping us. What we need is for you to pass this.
That means
We
time's up,
can
I think.
unmask and verify law enforcement. Passing this ordinance does not give us false hope, but shows that we have allies in our local government who will fight for us and care and who will document ICE activity. As our immigrant communities are coming out to support people who need
I'm sorry,
food,
I need to ask you to wrap up so that the last couple of people have a chance to talk.
who need food or rent, Dual is bringing life into this world. We need our elected officials to show up when times are hard and fight for us too. We are living in times where we're feeling powerless.
not gonna
that
finish
we
up.
aren't, you aren't. Please don't get
Makers,
caught up in a narrative
cut
where
the
we
mic.
can't do anything.
Cut the mic.
And
Cut the mic.
I really need to please ask you to wrap up.
She's not going to stop.
We've got to, there's a lot of people waiting to testify. We've only got time for a couple of them.
we need you
She's going
to
to keep going.
systemically fight alongside us.
Oh, wow. She did stop. And they did the clapping again.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Saldivar. I live in District 2 and I'm a community organizer with youth in District 1, Together Lab. I'm here in support of Councillor Canal's masking ordinance. I work alongside middle and high school students in East Portland. They are incredible leaders, and right now, many of them are living through what feels like yet another disaster impacting their families. Increased ICE activity has created deep fear and instability in our communities. Parents are being detained, livelihoods are being disrupted, young people are afraid to leave their homes.
Right now, there's a decrease in ICE activity in Oregon, just FYI, not an increase. It's a decrease currently.
I know this fear personally. I grew up with a constant worry that my own parents could be taken away at any time. I remember the panic when they didn't answer the phone, wondering if something had happened today. Today, the young people I work with in District 1 are carrying that same fear, all while watching their city be terrorized by masked federal agents.
Is it grifting if I make sure you guys all hit the like button? Some people say it's grifting to ask you to hit the like buttons, and I don't think it's grifting. It's just if you've got nothing else to do, there's a thumbs up there. You know, you can click it. I don't know if it's a grifting thing, but some people say it is.
No young person should have to live like this in our city. This is not community safety. Pass this ordinance, require officers to identify themselves, restrict the use of masks, and today, give our young people a city where they don't have to be afraid and where no one with power gets to hide.
Thank you. I believe we have Senator Pham next on Zoom.
Does that end the public comment?
Hi, Chair Novick, Chair Canal, and members of the Community and Public Safety Committee. For the record, my name is Con Pham, and I'm proud to be the state senator representing District 23, the State Senate, District 23, Southeast and Northeast Portland. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my support for the right to know who's policing you ordinance. As a state senator, I have heard clearly from so many of my
Southeast and
constituents
Northeast?
about how mass kidnappings are striking fear in my district and across Oregon. In the state Senate, I was proud to be a chief sponsor of the recently passed statewide legislation known as LEVA, or HB 4138. LEVA requires local law enforcement bureaus in Oregon to have a masking ban policy. And the right to know who's policing you ordinance meets this new state requirement and adds some additional components that strengthen transparency and accountability in several key ways. This ordinance directs the Portland Police Bureau to protect Portlanders by verifying that people who are detaining someone are actual law enforcement. And it requires law enforcement to document these encounters when they happen so the public can receive clear information about the impacted members of our families and communities. I'm delighted to see the city.
Make sure you guys follow Ground Zero PDX. He's the guy that's out there, standing out there for 3 hours, just kind of out the outside, just to see if any TFers show up. So make sure you give him a follow there, right there. Hold on a second. Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody's yelling across the street. There's always some weirdos.
He's in Portland. He's got to deal with Portland stuff. Anyway, back to this thing here.
Very grateful for your
All right.
testimony. I have to leave for another meeting right now.
Thank you. I didn't see Councilor Zimmerman still there. Thanks, Councilor.
Thank you, not Tina Kotex. Thank you. I appreciate it. We'll have you back on the show once in a while here.
Councilor Canal,
If you're doing
final
good.
thoughts?
Are we closing this out? Is that what's going on? Okay. All right.
Sorry, I mean, we were told by the clerk's office we have to close this out now. I apologize to the people that were waiting to talk. We'll take this up again on April 7th.
What?
So on that subject, and I'm about to gavel out the committee.
Why
This
is it
committee,
quitting?
it's strange. The committee will remain a committee, and it'll have the same 5 members. Starting in April,
clerk is
Councilor
telling them what
Novick will
to
be
do?
the sole chair. Councilor Murillo will be the vice chair of the committee, and there'll be a new committee of the whole that I'll be chairing that has as its responsibility
Why is a clerk telling
emergency response,
council members what
including
to do?
federal response. So I'm not actually sure where this one goes, but I know that one starts meeting on April 2nd, and so please keep an eye out. I'll be all on our social media as well for where it goes next. And I want to thank also the 84 people who wrote in testimony in support of this.
Not
And
sure who
that's
that
the
is.
same as the 84 people who wrote in testimony, period. So 100% there. Thank you. And with that, if I may, I'll gavel close the last meeting in this iteration of the Community and Public Safety Committee.
Right before they started yelling and screaming in there also. Not Tina Kotex. If not Tina Kotex was there, you would have been standing up in the upper deck and everything and would have been seeing that they're yelling and screaming likely from the upper deck. Just to kind of explain what's probably going on right now. And let's check back in on Shane there as there might be coming out there. See if he gets any trouble over here. What they're likely doing right now is yelling and screaming at the area there. Give you audio. There's Ground Zero PDX right here. But like I say, that as they slowly come out with a few people there, while yell at Shane as they're coming out, but while they're still in there, they're yelling and screaming, ordinance now, unmask ICE, repeated 3 or 4 word chants over and over and over again, as they get personalized security for I think he's a state rep or state attorney or something like that, city attorney, I believe in that one. Actually, he gets police escorted there. Maybe that guy made sense or whatever. Some of the things he was saying. He said that that's a stupid idea to do this when the state has more authority over not over the feds, but they can fight the feds better than the city can. So by having a city thing, it's just going to confuse everything, is what that guy was saying. That's why he needed the city police to protect him from lefties out there at that point there. In my opinion, that's why you saw that guy do that. Let's see what Shane's got to say.
That was weird.
What was weird?
Girl Scout cookie Tifa's kind of walking back and forth. Didn't say anything to me that time.
I don't know if there's another meeting or something like that from the Oregon City government. Let me take a peek over here and fix this real quick. Hold on.
All right. Look at the hair on this one.
Oh, there's the blue hairs. Whatever color that is.
TDS can affect anybody at any age.
Like, where's the bus? Where's the senior citizen bus? Not saying old people are bad, but they either had gray hair or blue hair in that meeting, or bald hair. Very, very rarely anything else. But she's calling for the bus. She got her daughter to pick her up. That's nice.
I'm gonna find a.
Hey, sister, you think so?
I'm gonna find a different spot. This is a good spot right here. There goes Molly.
That guy was the closest thing there to kind of speaking for the cops on that one there. I'm not sure if he was the cops attorney or something like that, but he was at least making sense. Like, if you're going to sort of do this, there's going to be federal people out there that don't want their identification known, and it's going to cost Portland more resources to do this, and nothing's going to get accomplished because there's already a state law in the works at this point. That's a lot of hair there.
The news lady's still out here.
I'm not sure what channel it is.
Zubair.
Like I said, if they're still in there,
doing the normal pacing back and forth,
yelling and screaming and acting like a bunch of children. Actually, let me see if I can find TikTok or something like that. If there's a TikTok.
Girl Scout Tifa.
Let's see if I can find a TikTok
With
something inside there.
I don't have a name for that one with the rag that he always changes his look. One of the short dudes.
Maybe.
Not sure what kind of. It's not even worth it to even ask anybody what their gender is or anything.
Protest.
I have a stalker, guys.
There. There's Portland protest.
Oh, was that fuck that chicken Popeyes? It might have been.
Nothing on TikTok. I can see.
Very well could have been.
He's getting a cold too. He's not getting it from me though. I think he's a vapor or something like that's getting it. So don't blame me for the Shane's cold, okay? I did not transfer it to Shane.
How'd you know, Eric? Yeah, wild animals use bright colors to warn you that they're dangerous. Yep, absolutely.
Wow, you guys have been here for fucking how long? How long have you been here? Since 1492, and you still don't know anything about the native people. That's funny.
Looks like the news lady is on right now.
Oh, ask my mommy. literally said that like a little bit. And then you have a fucking patriot hat when you never even fucking served in the military.
You
How
can be
come you never served in the military?
you can be patriotic and not be in the military. That's silly.
Yeah, well, when we go to a combat zone, we get fucked up and you don't care. That makes you not.
Well, I have real vets in my chat, and they say you're not real.
Whatever. They can fucking. Everyone has a DD 214.
Yeah.
Anyone can look up.
And you-
anyone can look up my DD 214.
And you fucked up.
Anybody.
You fucked up.
So, right wingers already tried that shit.
You fucked up.
Try again. Try again.
Well, you're not a real vet.
If you say
Don't
that again,
don't
I'm
come
gonna
up.
knock your.
Don't come up on me like that.
You know, I would love to go to any
Because
veteran in this chat.
I've been keeping myself away from you, and you just
pussy.
keep coming around
You
me.
just said I'm not a real veteran. That's gonna make me fucking stick around. Anyone can look up a DD.
Who cares what I think?
Anyone can look up a DD.
Who cares what I
you
think?
never fucking served ever. You've never served this country.
Vitor wants a box of macaroons and Thin Mints. If you got it. I think she sold out.
Pepper spray people for their First Amendment right? That's weird.
Never happened. That's what you guys do. Girl Scout Tifa.
Make sure you have your PDX to follow, guys. We're watching
Oh
right
yeah,
now.
they were hiding stuff.
Not a whole lot else going on right now.
She was just hiding stuff in that.
I can see
in that bush.
Goes to do business.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, man.
Here they are. Yep, like they do to their kids.
Okay.
Kind of like how they do to their kids. Thank you, Slick and Wicked. I appreciate that.
Where the fuck are your friends? Seriously, it's so sad, bro.
Oh, there she is. You guys wanted to see Leilani. There's your Leilani.
Oh, you're not talking.
It feels weird. Are you sure? Yeah, they definitely.
Thank you, Mama Rona. I appreciate you. Thank you for being in the chat. It's very, very nice of you.
How many earrings you need, buddy? Are you a girl or a guy?
One day. Yeah. Listen. You the fuck out of this.
Who are you? Do you know who I am? You just call strangers that? Okay.
Yeah, a little bit crazy. Crazy or homeless or something. I don't know what that guy on the left is. That Darcel right there walking by? Yeah, there's Darcel walking by there. Or the people know what I mean by that.
You know who's conquered is these white colonialists by Israel. They proved that. They don't understand why they have the Declaration of Independence. Their religion is walking hypocrisy. Their English translated Bibles will never last. And their logic is flawed. They think we're all just a bunch of animals. Yeah, we can fight like animals. We fight much greater than you. That's why you need guns and bombs to do your job. But even that's failing you. How interesting.
I see how it is, Angry. You're worried about Shane being down there with 10 left-leaning people there, maybe, and right next to the Portland police station nearby there. But when I was hanging across the street and walking through a crowd of 50 of them yesterday, you know, different types of lefty organizations and things like that, you weren't worried about me at all then. I see how you are. I see how you are. Worried about him with 10 people, but me around 50 people, you're not worried about. I got you. I see how it is.
Right. You call your police to press charges. He threatened me. He hit me. Oh, he's a conquered native. Oh, you see this right here, baby
Worth the
boy?
50, I think.
Yeah, I'm not worried about you. You wanna know what's great about me? I was born here just like you.
Well,
My
you shouldn't
parents were
worry.
born here too. You
Why?
can't get rid of me.
Why should you worry
Don't
about
you worry.
me?
You can't
Why
get
should
rid
you
of me.
worry about
I
me?
worry
What?
about you because I choose to, bitch boy. Because I choose to worry about
So I
you.
live rent
Take a
free.
look.
So I live rent free in your
Take a
head.
look.
Richard?
I don't give a fuck. You can live
You
rent free in
don't.
my
If you
head.
don't give.
You hear the name that he called him a second ago? Bitch boy. That's the name Richard usually calls him. So this is Little Richard. Yeah, Little Richard right here.
To a close. So you and all your audience can know that. Your colonization and all your little hatred, touching on kids. You know, you're funny. You talk about
I don't
Muslims
touch
touching on
kids. You don't even know
you
me.
support people that touch kids. Pussy
You don't
boy.
even know
I
me.
who the
How
fuck
do you know
are,
who I
pussy
support?
Boy. I know who you
How do you
are,
know who I
pussy
support?
Boy. You know who you don't know though? You don't know who I am, pussy.
Well, I'll find out here in a minute
You
as soon
will.
as my
You
chat
will.
lets me know.
Absolutely. Let your chat tell you who the fuck I am.
Is that
pussy.
Melina over there
And
somewhere?
you'll know.
Oh, there's
Trust
Seth.
me.
Oh, I
My
see Seth.
actions speak much louder
Green
than
hat guy,
words.
right?
Huh?
Why, are you trying to
Yeah.
go to jail or something?
That doesn't happen. Good luck.
It
Good luck
doesn't?
with that. I got a Jewish
Okay.
lawyer. Good luck with that.
Oh, so you
Good luck
mean,
with that.
what do you do to not get
Good luck with
arrested?
that. Huh?
What do you do that would
Don't
get
worry
you
about what I do to
arrested?
not get arrested. Just listen
Well,
to the
then why
words
are you
coming out of my
talking to
mouth,
me if
pussy.
I'm not
'Cause I don't
supposed
have
to
answer your
worry?
questions, pussy.
Well, what's the point of you
will
being
worry,
here
pussy.
then?
You will worry. You
What's
will.
the point?
You'll never.
Not Tina Kotex. I think you know a lot about these people here. I mean, as you're kind of a reporter and things like that, but is it strange that you know so much about these people's names and things like that? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's interesting.
Find out. Do something. See what happens. I dare you. If you do that to me, you'll regret it. I'm not the one. I can handle it. Try me. Find out. Find out. You know why you're not doing it? Because you can look in my eyes and tell. Try me. You do it and we'll both be on the ground. Yeah, that's what I thought, pussy.
Wow.
Palestine flag. Got the communist fist on one shoulder. I can see what other marks he made on me.
So that's why you're out here. So that's why.
Who's the 40-year-old with the girlish backpack over there? A veteran of some sort, evidently, allegedly. Is that Stacy Fupa or something like that, or is that a different one?
Get your hand away from behind your back then. Pussy. Exactly. You ain't doing shit, like I said.
I don't break the law like you.
Fuck out of here, boy. Fuck the law. Fuck
Exactly.
your law.
Exactly. See?
Fuck your law. You come here taking.
It's not my law. It's the country's law.
Fuck the country's law, and fuck you, baby boy.
Good story. Good story, bro.
Is he trying to do a rap song while he's talking or something like that? It sounds like he's trying to put it to a rhythm or something like that. You know, I don't know what's going on with that. Something like that. Some wild nonsense going on. Notice that the normies just kind of walk around the nonsense. They know it's nonsense. Like, we see this every day. They're just gonna walk right through it.
I know. Look into his eyes. I tried looking into his eyes.
Even I don't go down to Portland so much or whatever. I'm getting used to some of the names or whatever. The Leilani, Seth, I know him. I guess there's multiple Seths, so I'll just call him Seth with the green hair. Is he Frog Boy or something like that? I guess. Which one's Melina? Not Tina Kotex. Which one's Melina? What's she wearing?
Thank you so much. I can look in his eyes and see the back of his head from the inside, right? No brainer. Idiot.
I was
Like I'm
wondering
gonna.
all that,
Like
you know,
I'm
got
gonna.
the land back thing on this thing there.
Like I'm gonna start a fight and get arrested. So stupid.
But look at the flag over there. What's the blue and green flag over there?
Yeah, if you really wanted to fight, you would just fight.
Weird looking flag.
No, it's not a veteran hat. It's a celebrating 250 years.
Of what? Shittiness?
Oh my God! Yeah. Well, you live here. Why don't you move to another country then? If you hated the country so much, then leave. I like our country. I actually like our country. Yeah, well, I'm Cherokee too. So what? I don't go around. I'm Cherokee.
Alien, all right, you want some Republican knowledge? The Alien
Yeah, but bro,
Resurrection Act of 1792.
I have
white
Cherokee.
immigrants.
Oh, he won't even let me
Immigrants,
talk.
you are a motherfucking immigrant.
He's not
Get
even
the
gonna
fuck
let
outta
me.
here,
He's not
pussy
even gonna
boy.
let me talk.
Go the fuck back over the Atlantic Ocean where the fuck your ancestors came from, baby.
Well,
If you have
wherever the Cherokee
then you
Indians.
like motherfucking Samuel L. Jackson and Django, then you fucking weirdo. The fuck you doing over there behind the camera, then working with the goddamn Confederates? Are you still
What kind of a weirdo is this?
gonna maintain this land the
Hang
way
out
you
with your
maintained
homies
it?
there,
Red and
whatever.
blue.
Like it's
Your
all me.
Constitution
Like
is
it's
going
my
down,
thing.
bitch.
Like I'm the
Your
one that
Constitution
created
is
it.
going down. It's gonna burn in the ashes of your fucking flag.
What a fucking weirdo. Oh my god.
Oh, you'll see how weird it is. Give it 100 to 150 years. If not sooner.
I'll be dead. I'll be dead by then. Fucking weirdo. Oh my god.
And again, they're at the wrong building, okay? The federal building, they give us the federal orders to federal workers, including ICE, is across the other side of the park. They're the only ones that can do anything about what ICE is doing. The building over here has no power to do anything against the feds. Hence the supremacy clause and amendment number 10. It's about 200 feet that way. Right behind you is the building you want to protest. And they have not spent one day of protesting there. Not one day.
What do you guys think? Are they making a difference?
Something like that. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, no, the guy's just coming over to me so I can make the first move so he can fight me and then I can get in trouble for it. So I'm not stupid. I know how the law works. And then he says, fuck your law. Well, you don't even make sense, bro. His logic is some kind of weird Zionist.
Weird.
Like he said on his shirt. These people are freaking stupid.
Sure, you guys are following ground zero PDX.
Right. There's no point in being here. These idiots.
I was wondering if he was going to call it a day.
I've seen that guy. He's down at ICE sometimes and does camera work.
How much does YouTube give you for your super chat?
Well, I can't tell you how much they give me, but they take
like
30%.
They take 30%.
Yeah. Yeah, too much.
Or 35%, I thought.
Yeah, that Antifa guy actually asked me a question. He came over to me calmly and asked me a question. So, but I don't know, guys. I don't feel like it was very accomplished for them.
They'll get what they want. They're the city saying we're going to do something. That's what they sort of want. What's going to end up happening is they can't do anything against the feds. If it goes to court or something like that, which it likely would do, if I would imagine it gets expedited, because Denver's doing a similar thing. Once it gets expedited, hopefully to SCOTUS, they'll say, yeah, they're federal employees. They can do what they want to. If the city thinks they can ask them if they're ICE, while they're out there or something like that. And once they say, yes, they're ICE, they have to be left alone. I'm guessing that's as much as they can do, or they can't verify. It shouldn't be allowed to verify ID at that point there. Unless they're on city government areas or something like that. But if they're out in public, yeah, I don't see that as being a city thing. He's just walking away. See if there's anything else going on.
If we're not breaking any laws, then how can they? It's not happening. Like, even look what happened with Shane.
See a Terry Shrunk Plaza, the Terry Shrunk Plaza in the background there. Yep. walking sort of towards the federal building there, I think. Midwest bikers sometimes it didn't help on August 22nd a few years ago. I tell you that they had a lot of bikers show up that day, but Antifa had a lot more numbers back then too. Or is that that's the federal building he's right in front of right there, isn't it? That's where they're supposed to protest. If you want to protest the federal government, maybe protest at the federal building. Even the Eugene people know that. ICE building, or just the intermodal people, the people giving the orders, are in that building.
Yep, he wanted me to do something, trying to be aggressive, and one point he got his foot close to me and I told him to back up. And at first he didn't, but then he noticed me put my hand in my pocket, and he kind of backed up a little bit. It's like, bro, you want to say whatever you want to say. I don't give a shit, but don't get in my face. I stood my ground the whole time. He had several attempts to get me to back.
All right, guys, I'm going to send you over to Tommy Boy over here, or Climatics anyway. He's doing this interview here with Adam Francisco, good guy. You've seen me play a lot of his videos. Everything's there. So I'm going to raid you over there. Click the link there that I'll put in the chat here in a second also. Good guy. Or go back to Ground Zero PDX. But all you guys should be following him is 10 times or so that I put his link in the chat. You better followed him already. But it wouldn't do good to raid. He's probably about to quit anyway. So anyway, there's the link to the stream you're watching there. Climatics interviewing Ad Francisco with Tommy Boy there. Good guy there. I interviewed him 3 or 4 years ago back in the day. So, but yeah, at least his kidney thing is a lot better now. But hopefully you guys are doing good. We'll see you over there here in a second. Thank you guys for watching and hanging out with me. I appreciate it. Or you can watch BCP, but he's probably getting ready to quit too. But he's also live covering what we just covered also. The BC Preacher on YouTube. Otherwise, guys, thank you for the donations there. Natina Kotex, thanks for hanging out. How many times did you guys hit the like button? Somebody, that's always a question there. Sometimes people want to know how many times you hit the like button before the end of the stream here. So let me find out how many times you guys clicked the like button. You clicked it 61, make it 62 times. It's pretty good. It's pretty good, I guess. Could have clicked it more. Could have clicked it more. Hopefully, you guys hit the subscribe button once 3 or 5 times also. All right, guys. I appreciate it. If Antifa was watching, get out of here. Good chat. Free speech and all that. Okay, you guys have a good time here. We'll send you over there to see what they're talking about on this show here. Thank you, guys. God bless. Go ahead and say your goodbyes on the last 30 seconds here, okay? And then you'll be rated over there. Click the go now thing when it shows up. Thank you.